Tonight, the sky is so beautiful. The stars shine down on the academy grounds, promising a bright and hopeful future. The next morning in the male dormitory, someone called out, "Shirone, wake up." They shook him gently and said, "Are you really going to waste this precious break? Come on, let's go out and have some fun." Aruki stood beside Need, watching Shirone's face closely. He thought to himself that Shirone must be exhausted. Need wasn't giving up, though. He tried shaking Shirone a few more times. Shirone. But Shirone still didn't respond. He lay still, his eyes closed tightly. Shirone wasn't refusing to get up. It felt more like he was trapped, unable to move at all. He silently thought, right, I'm stuck in this nightmare again. Just like last time, I'm drifting into that endless void, surrounded by the movement of the stars and heading toward that massive galaxy with its twisting light waiting for me. But this time, something feels different. I always wake up at this point. There's something off about it. The something Shirone was referring to was a string of glowing golden particles, shining with an almost magical light. They intertwined almost like shattered pieces of a mirror. Shirone couldn't quite tell what it was. Shirone's eyes went wide. In front of him was a scene so surreal, it was hard to put into words. Shirone's whole body suddenly disappeared. He broke out in a cold sweat and woke up with a start. He gasped in shock. The dream had changed. He lay there dazed, wondering to himself, what is this? Did what happened yesterday cause all this? On the wall, the clock showed it was nearly 1 p.m. Shirone still hadn't fully recovered, lying still on the bed, his eyes wide open, his mouth moving slightly. But above him, a string of bright golden beads, dazzling in their beauty, was swirling into continuous circles around him. He gripped the blanket tightly and, in a state of confusion, asked, "What's going on with these things?" Shirone quickly got out of bed and grabbed a note from Mead and Aruki. It read, "We're heading to the casino. As long as we can predict Aruki's behavior, we'll still end up rich." Then he noticed the two disgusting, mocking faces of Need and Aruki drawn at the bottom of the note. Shirone let out a helpless sigh. "Oh my god," he muttered, "a casino? I bet they're going to come back empty-handed. And with this 3-day suspension from school, what should I do now?" His mind drifted to his parents back home. He wondered if he should take this opportunity to visit them. He was sure they'd be shocked to hear the news, and then they'd probably bombard him with a million questions. What? Suspended? You're being punished? Thinking of this, he quickly pushed the thought aside. Never mind. I definitely need to keep this a secret. A little while later, Shirone was dressed neatly, standing in front of the mirror with a smile, carefully adjusting the cuff of his shirt. He smiled joyfully, feeling excited inside as he suddenly remembered something he truly wanted to do. For some reason, his heart was racing. After saying that, Shirone turned and left. He could notice the mysterious golden particles that had followed his silhouette. They formed the image of Shirone standing tall in front of the mirror, as if it was truly him standing there. Soon, Shirone stopped in front of a well-maintained bookstore. He reached out, grasping the doorknob, his heart filled with emotion. "I've been learning nonstop these past few years, and now I want to buy a novel for myself. It reminds me of the old days." A wave of painful memories suddenly flooded Shirone's mind. The harsh, arrogant voice of the bookstore owner echoed in his ears as though it had just happened. "No, where do you think you're putting those filthy fingers?" Back then, Shirone was just a poor, ragged child. Even though he was no longer that person, the sting of being looked down on still deeply lingered in his soul. Shirone anxiously wondered, what should I do if they tell me I'm not allowed to touch anything anymore? After a few seconds of hesitation, Shirone finally made up his mind and stepped into the bookstore. She was still the same owner from years ago, still with her curly orange hair and blue dress, but the haughty attitude had been replaced with a warm smile. She was unexpectedly friendly. "Oh my, welcome handsome customer. It's such an honor for you to visit this humble place. Are you here to pick up some merchandise?" Her enthusiasm caught Shirone off guard for a moment. "Ah, no, I'm just here to buy a book." The owner cheerfully replied, "Oh, I see. Well, take your time and feel free to choose." "My goodness, you're really handsome," she added. Shirone wasn't used to such friendly treatment. He awkwardly responded, "Thank you." He was surprised that she didn't recognize him. It had only been 5 years. As he watched her walk away, he couldn't help but wonder if he had really changed that much. After picking out the book he wanted, Shirone went up to pay the owner. As she looked at the gold coins he handed her, she flattered him again. "My, you're so generous. Thank you so much." Holding the book titled Raising Dragons to Defeat the Demon King, the one he dreamed of having since he was a kid, Shirone couldn't contain his joy. He finally had his very own novel. It was his first book. With that thought, he happily spun around, holding the book in his hands. Passersby couldn't help but shake their heads and mutter, "Wow, what could make that young man so giddy?" He hugged the book to his chest, smiling quietly to himself, relieved that he had managed to save some of the allowance his family had sent him. Suddenly, he heard someone calling his name from behind. Shirone. A girl suddenly wrapped her arm around Shirone's. She looked at him, smiling brightly, and asked, "You're Shirone, right?" Startled by the unexpected hug, Shirone blushed, his ears turning red, and he panicked. "Who are you?" The girl didn't answer his question, but she didn't let go either. She turned around and waved her hand, calling out to someone. "That's him. You guys. It's Shirone." After a moment of observing, Shirone was shocked to realize that the girl in front of him was someone he knew. Her sweet voice hadn't changed at all. She was the innocent little girl who used to watch him so intently whenever he read his books. "Shirone, you're reading again." When they were kids, whenever Shirone sat under the tree reading, a group of kids would always tease him. Now seeing them again, he could still recognize them. And they instantly recognized him too. The muscular guy at the front shouted loudly, "Shirone, is it really you?" Shirone's eyes widened in surprise as he called out, "Alter." He turned to the girl beside him and correctly guessed her name. "Oh, so you're Lumina?" Lumina, happy that Shirone still remembered her, said excitedly, "That's right. Did you forget what I look like?" Shirone hesitated and replied, "I honestly didn't recognize you at first. You look so beautiful now." Shirone remembered that when they were younger, Lumina had a very cute nickname. Hearing him say that, Lumina seemed a little unhappy. She raised her fist and said, "What? When we were kids, you said I wasn't pretty." Shirone immediately chuckled awkwardly. "Oh, not exactly." The childhood friends quickly gathered around Shirone, eager to ask him a million questions. "What's going on with you? You're dressed like a noble now. Is it expensive? Wow, you changed so much." They crowded around him, firing off questions one after another. Shirone, caught off guard, nervously replied, "Well, this is." Before he could figure out how to respond, Alter, the leader of the kids in the village, called out to him, "Shirone, it's been so long. How you been?" He mentioned that he had asked Lord Vincent, but hadn't heard anything from him. Shirone looked at Alter, unsure how to explain. What should I tell them?" He thought, hesitating for a moment. "Well," he murmured, thinking it over. After all, they were bound to find out about him sooner or later. If he lied, they might be hurt. In the end, Shirone decided to be honest. "I've been studying at the Magic Academy." As soon as they heard this, everyone gasped in unison. "Magic? The Magic Academy?" Alter's expression suddenly became uncomfortable. He thought to himself, magic. Shirone recalled the old timeline. Ever since he was a child, Alter had always been strong and outgoing. Naturally, he became the leader of the group of kids. This happened when Alter was 10 years old. One day, Alter and the other kids from the village were heading into the forest when he suddenly looked off into the distance and said, "Shirone." He then asked, "Are you reading again?" Shirone, hearing the familiar voice, quickly turned around and replied, "Alter." The words from the book kept running through Alter's mind, but perhaps his weakness lay in his pride. Their attention was suddenly drawn to the thick book in Shirone's hands, and they muttered to each other in awe, "So many words. He must be really smart. We don't even know how to read books like that." Hearing his friends whispering admiringly behind him, Alter just stood there silent. Then he quickly walked up to Shirone, grabbed the book from his hands, and said loudly, "Why are you still studying this stuff? You should be out training, not reading these." Shirone, taken back by his strength, could only let out a startled shout. Alter, with his small axe on his shoulder and a strong, confident posture, said firmly, "You need to train your body if you want to be useful to society." In a small village in the mountains, a certain rule was well known. Thinking about it, the small figure of Shirone appeared in his mind. He smiled gently and then responded softly, "I understand. Alter." The stream of memories seemed to stop for a moment, but then continued. Following the leader's words, Alter found himself back in that scene. With a slightly puzzled expression, he noticed no immediate reaction and chose to remain silent. Then he exhaled deeply, as if releasing a heavy burden that had been weighing on him. A moment later, Alter returned the book to Shirone and said, "As long as you understand." The leader protected the village, and everyone followed the leader. This was the way people here survived, and it was the lesson Shirone had learned over the years. Then Alter smiled brightly and extended his hand toward him. "I'm going to play soccer. Want to come with me?" Suddenly, a loud shout rang out from a distance, "Alter." Lumina, holding a mop, charged toward them angrily while shouting to Alter, "I told you not to pick on Shirone." Alter, getting hit by Lumina's relentless attacks, protested with frustration, "Who's picking on who, you idiot?" She didn't pay any attention to his defense and continued shouting, "He just recovered from being sick, and you still think this isn't bullying?" After being scolded nonstop, Alter, now visibly annoyed, snapped, "If you keep acting like this, no one will want to marry you." Finishing his memories, Shirone silently chuckled to himself and thought, well, those things happened a long time ago. At that moment, Alter awkwardly spoke up, "I can't believe it. You really go to school?" Lumina, just as surprised, asked him, "You know how to use magic?" His friend sitting next to him was also excited and quickly said, Can you show us? Shirone, feeling a bit shy, smiled awkwardly and replied, No, not really. I just started learning, so I'm not very good yet. And besides, using magic outside the academy is against the rules, so... Hearing this, his friend sighed in disappointment. That's too bad. Suddenly, Alter noticed the book Shirone was holding tightly in his hands and said, You always have a book with you, just like before. Then he reached out and grabbed the book, saying, Hey, let me see what the Magic Academy's book says. Shirone was caught off guard by Alter's sudden action and exclaimed, Wait a minute. Inside, he was panicking. No, this is the novel I just bought to relax. Alter's grip tightened and he successfully yanked the book out of Shirone's hands. But in his rush, he lost his grip and it fell to the floor. Seeing this, Shirone instinctively shouted. In his mind, he thought, My precious book. Shirone reached out with his hand, trying to grab the book. Just as his hand was about to touch it, a flash of memories rushed through his mind. But he was lucky enough to catch the book. The fleeting memories felt so real that they caused Shirone a sharp pain, and he collapsed to the ground, clutching the book tightly. Everyone around him was immediately concerned and started asking what happened. Shirone, what's wrong all of a sudden? Are you okay? Lumina turned to Alter, clearly upset. Why did you do that again? You're not a kid anymore. Why are you still picking on him? He stammered. I didn't do anything. Shirone quickly spoke up. It's not his fault. It was just a coincidence. Don't worry. But Lumina, still anxious, said, You suddenly collapsed. How can I not worry? This isn't like you. Alter stood by, silently watching the two of them talk, a strange feeling rising inside him. When Lumina saw that Shirone was fine, she cheerfully spoke up. Well, let's not stand here. Are you coming with us? How about we go get something good to eat? Alter, who had been standing behind, chimed in, Yeah, come on, Shirone. He added enthusiastically, We're celebrating the store's discount day with a party at Lumina's place. Come hang out with us. What do you think? The others quickly agreed, Sounds great. Let's go. Seeing their excitement, Shirone smiled and responded, All right, let's go then. At the same time, Shirone silently thought, It's a good thing I don't have anything else to do right now, so it should be fine. A moment later, the chubby friend and another buddy arrived, pulling up in a carriage that stopped in front of them. Alter gently lifted Shirone up and cheerfully said, Go ahead and sit in the front seat. Caught off guard by the sudden move, Shirone exclaimed, You can lift me up like that? Hearing this, Alter laughed heartily and replied, With someone as light as you, it's no problem. After witnessing his display of strength, Shirone couldn't help but think, Alter, you bastard, while we've been apart, you've turned into a monster. Now you even know how to handle business. He looked at his friend and guessed, it's pretty likely Alter will become the new leader of the village. And so, Shirone and his friends made their way to Lumina's house. A short while later, Lumina's mom's voice rang out. Oh my, who's here? Is that you, Shirone? You're looking more handsome every day. Lumina must be swooning. Embarrassed, Lumina's face turned bright red as she quickly shouted, Mom, stop talking nonsense. After Lumina's mom's enthusiastic greeting, Shirone and the others continued their celebration. They all raised their glasses and cheerfully said, To Shirone, cheers. Looking at the lavish spread of food prepared before them, the brown-haired friend couldn't help but exclaim, This looks so delicious. Lumina, holding a glass of water, spoke up, Eat up, Shirone. He immediately replied, Thanks, I will definitely enjoy it. At the same time, the brown-haired friend, still curious, asked, But what about this drink? Was it? Before he could finish his sentence, the chubby friend quickly interrupted, saying, It's nothing, just carbonated barley water. On the other side, Alter quietly took big sips of his drink, silently observing everything happening around him. Then the brown-haired friend suddenly shouted, Shirone, tell us more about your school. You're probably the best student there, right? Hearing that, Shirone choked and coughed, and the sip of water in Alter's mouth almost came spilling out. Shirone continued, I'm really curious. Did you become a mage? The others eagerly chimed in, I heard only nobles go to that school. So, doesn't that mean you're studying with the nobles? Shirone felt deeply embarrassed by these questions and silently prayed, Please don't praise me in front of Alter. With a little help from the barley drink, the group kept talking nonstop. I bet there are a lot of beautiful women among the nobles, right? Tell us, we're so curious. Under the barrage of questions, Shirone waved his hand, reluctantly responding, How would I know? I'm too busy just studying. As soon as he finished speaking, Lumina let out a long sigh as if she had just survived a major ordeal. The next day, Alter suddenly slammed his glass of water down on the table and spoke up, Shirone, going to school is fine, but have you thought about your next step? Shirone was startled. He turned his head and said, Next step. Alter continued, Right now, Lord Vincent is taking care of the entire family's well-being. Soon, it will be your turn to take responsibility, and you'll have to get married too. After you finish your studies, do you think you'll be ready to handle all of that? Upon hearing this, Shirone fell into deep thought. There was no guarantee that he would even graduate. Seeing his reaction, Alter took a sip from his mug and said, "That's right, you need to start thinking more realistically." As soon as he said this, Shirone's mind began to race. Thinking about it now, he had spent so much time focused on his studies, but never really considered the bigger picture. His friends were all helping their families with business while his father was still struggling. He silently asked himself, when will I be able to help my father? Seeing him like this, Luvina felt a bit worried. At that moment, Alter spoke up again. "I'm not trying to bring the mood down, you know." Then he added with a challenge, "Hey, Shirone, how about a little arm wrestling? You used to be really good at it." Shirone was completely surprised when he heard that. Arm wrestling? The chubby guy got excited right away. Yeah, Alter and Shirone used to be a pretty close match back in the day. His brown-haired friend agreed wholeheartedly. Shirone looks like that, but he's actually really strong. That made Shirone think back to those old days. Yeah, we used to do that a lot when we were younger. The brown-haired friend exclaimed, remembering their match. Chiron, you were amazing back then. Alter insisted on a rematch. This match doesn't count, let's go again. But today it felt like the right thing to do was let Alter save face for the sake of the village. Thinking that, Shirone got into position and said, all right, how about we make it interesting and bet on this match? Alter grinned, clearly excited, and replied, whoever loses has to pay for today's drinks. Shirone agreed. With both of them hyped up, the atmosphere grew charged again. Their friends cheered and shouted, the battle between the mage and the warrior. As they got ready, Shirone tightly gripped Alter's hand, silently thinking to save Alter's face. I have to hold on as long as I can before I lose. Then suddenly someone yelled, go. Immediately their hands locked in a fierce struggle. There was a loud sound that made even the grain barrel shake. Luvina and the others watching were stunned, holding their breath. In the end, Shirone had collapsed on the couch, his body steaming with smoke. Everything happened so quickly that he couldn't help but wonder what just happened. His friends, seeing this, grew worried and asked, Shirone, are you okay? At that moment, Luvina raised her voice, Alter, why did you use so much force? Alter quickly responded, I didn't expect it to turn out like this. He wasn't this weak before. Luvina, feeling helpless, sighed, Alter, oh Alter. Seeing her reaction, Alter felt a bit guilty. He then spoke up, I'm sorry. Let me cover the costs for today. Shirone immediately refused, saying, no, I'm the one who lost today. He awkwardly smiled and added, you're much stronger than before. With that, Shirone pulled out a gold coin from his pocket to pay. But in his panic, he accidentally dropped his wallet, and the gold coins spilled out. His friends gathered around, shouting, gold coins, you got 5 of them. Luna wasn't any different. She grabbed one of the coins and asked him, Shirone, why do you have so much money? 5 gold coins is what I earn in a whole month of work. Seeing Alter's expression, Shirone silently thought to himself, what do I do now? I'm done for. Luvina held the coin and asked, Shirone, where did you get all this money? Shirone, flustered, stammered, I got sponsored. Just as he finished speaking, the brown-haired guy quickly jumped in and asked, what's going on? Are you saying you're going to live the rest of your life without ever worrying about money? His comment caught Shirone off guard and quickly denied it, saying, that's not it. At the same time, he thought to himself, this isn't good. It was clear that the comment had really triggered Alter. His face turned red and looked a little frustrated. But then, Alter suddenly let out a long sigh. A moment later, he stood up straight, puffed himself up like an angry cat, and shouted, why are you all making such a fuss over just a few gold coins? The chubby guy was startled and stammered, sorry. Seeing this reaction from him, Luvina thought to herself, now I understand what's going on with Alter. The others around them shrank back, suddenly remembering the past. They all shared the same thought, that's right. Ever since we were kids, whenever Shirone was around, this topic always made things a little awkward. Noticing the shift in mood, Alter made an effort to calm himself down. Then he gently clapped his hands to break the tension and said, right, have you all heard about this? The chubby guy immediately jumped in as if catching a wave. There's a wild animal in the mountains that eats meat. The brown-haired guy joined in the conversation. I heard about that too. Wild animals have been disappearing lately, hadn't they? Luvina secretly felt relieved. This was the perfect opportunity. If that kid agrees, this will work out. Thanks to this topic, everyone started to ease up and get excited again, picking up the conversation. My dad says it's something like a bear, is that right? Luvina asked. Shirone quickly joined in. He was eager to speak up. Yeah, I heard that from my dad too, but why would something from the north come all the way down here? Luvina responded, I know. It's probably something like its breeding season or something like that. Anyway, they say it goes out hunting every day, so we all need to be careful. But since it's hiding pretty deep in the forest, it's not really dangerous unless we go looking for it. At that moment, Alter's gaze became sharper. He spoke up. What if we went hunting for it ourselves? Everyone was shocked and responded in unison. Us? He nodded confidently. Yeah, we'll help the villagers. You guys know about it already, right? My skills. With a self-assured smile, Alter continued, if it's just a bear, there's no need for adults to get involved. Let's go take it down ourselves. Seeing the excitement in his eyes, the brown-haired friend eagerly responded, finally, you can hunt a bear on your own now. Alter said, a regular bear will be easy. Shirone, barely believing his ears, repeated in shock, what, really? A bear? Noticing the admiration in his friend's reactions, Alter smiled with satisfaction and decided, all right, we'll leave tomorrow morning. He glanced at Shirone and added, you're coming with us, right, Shirone? At that, Lumina's eyes suddenly lit up and she exclaimed, Shirone too? Alter confirmed, of course, he's been on hunts with us before, right? Shirone didn't hesitate to respond, if I can be of help, I'll join. Happy with that answer, Alter raised his glass and said, great, we'll eat tomorrow morning in front of Lumina's house. Lumina, sitting nearby, called out, all right then. They all clinked their glasses and cheered together. It'll be a bear hunt. Well, we're going hunting with Alter, Shirone said with a light sip of beer, secretly excited, eager for what was to come. Although this wasn't part of his original plan, he was still thrilled. Time passed quickly, and before he knew it, it was early morning. Lumina opened the door and announced, Shirone, do you sleep well? Let's go now. Shirone fixed a short knife to his thigh and replied to her, all right, I'm ready. Let's go. They both stepped out of the house. Lumina excitedly waved her hand ahead and called out, everything's good over here. Their friends happily waved back. Seeing them, Alter reminded them, if you fall behind, we're leaving you behind, so keep up. Hearing that, Shirone laughed and replied, don't worry. Together, they walked deeper into the misty forest, the morning fog still lingering. After a while, they got to work setting things up. All right, flip it over, said one of them. At the same time, the chubby friend worked diligently, securing the net to a tree branch. Once finished, he signaled to the two others below. Seeing them work so smoothly together, Shirone couldn't help but admire. You guys set the trap so quickly. You're amazing. The friend with blue hair laughed and responded, we just set the trap. The hardest part is still up to Alter. At that moment, Alter, who was scouting the area, noticed some scratch marks on a tree. He silently guessed, looks like the bear is close by. Then Alter called out, from now on, we'll scout this area. If you spot it, don't provoke it. Fall back and report to me immediately. The others acknowledged the order right away. Watching this, Shirone silently thought, wow, he really is a pro. At the same time, Alter turned back, staring at someone and smiling. It was Lumina, humming a song excitedly, looking really cute. After walking a few steps, Shirone suddenly realized that if he just searched for it, oh, that's right, if he used his spiritual domain, it might help. He closed his eyes tightly, focused his energy, and thought to himself, it will help Alter find that bear more quickly. In just a moment, Shirone entered a state of concentration. But what appeared in his mind wasn't the image of a bear. It was the carcass of an animal with a large chunk of flesh missing. Shirone froze and wondered, what is that? He turned back to look at his friends and sensed that something was off. There was something strange going on. Using his senses, Shirone instinctively took a step forward. He placed his hand over his eyes in disbelief, unable to believe what he was seeing. Shirone brushed the leaves aside, and a thought kept repeating over and over in his mind. No way, no way. Just as he was about to reach the image he saw while using his spiritual domain, a large hand slammed down on his shoulder, and a loud voice shouted, Shirone! It was Alter. He yanked Shirone's shoulder and demanded, what are you doing? How could you disappear from our sight without saying anything? He continued speaking loudly, we did this because of you. But before he could finish his sentence, the scene before them made Alter fall silent. Beneath their feet lay the massive carcass of an animal, along with countless other dead creatures scattered everywhere. Alter, startled, wondered to himself, what is all this? The group of friends had caught up with them. The bodies weren't just lying on the ground. Some were even hanging from the branches of trees. One of the chubby friends shouted, what is that? Alter. Alter turned around to reply, that's. But before he could say anything, Shirone interrupted, we need to pull back. This isn't something an Momo Bear could do. Hearing that, Alter gasped and said, what? Shirone continued, we need to report this to the adults and seal off the mountain. We might even have to send a request to the city for soldiers to handle this. Seeing that, Alter quickly grabbed his shoulder, stammering as he interrupted, wait, Shirone, wait. Soldiers, what do you mean? Shirone said, we don't even know what this is yet. What are you talking about? Alter asked. Shirone turned around and replied, didn't you just say it yourself? This is not a bear we can handle. Seeing Alter's determined expression, he shouted angrily, what do you know? I'm the leader. Giving orders is my job. Witnessing the conflict between them, Lumina nervously clenched her fist and quietly said, "Alter, Shirone knows something's wrong here and is trying to stop it." "No, listen to me. Just listen." Alter ignored her and continued to shout, "You've always been like this. You never recognized me as the leader, haven't you? I told you not to treat me like the fool I used to be." Hearing this, Shirone was a little stunned and said, "Alter." But a rustling sound behind them froze him and placed a cold chill running through his body. The others felt it too. The chubby guy, now terrified, spoke up, "Guys, do you see that? It's coming this way." Alter immediately reacted, raising his bow. He stretched the string as tight as he could, ready for action. The others followed his lead, aiming their arrows in the direction of the noise. Even the brown-haired guy, trembling, pulled his string back, but his arrow was aimed higher than before. The sight before them terrified him. His body shook as he stuttered, "Alter, what? What is that? What is that monster?" In front of them stood a huge wolf, its eyes filled with a bloodthirsty, menacing hunger. Chiron bit his lip, thinking to himself, a monster, a mysterious living being that doesn't follow the laws of evolution. Endless thoughts kept swirling in his mind. He had seen it before in a book about monsters he'd read earlier. That thing was that moment. Alter shouted, then fired an arrow at it, yelling, "Die." But the creature quickly tilted its head to the side. Seeing this, the brown-haired boy panicked and said, "It dodged the arrow." Chiron's expression was just as shocked. He had recognized it as a werewolf. After its move, he silently confirmed it's a monster with intelligence. From what Chiron knew, monsters in general were stronger and faster than regular beasts. The truth was, some of them even had fairly high intelligence. The origins of monsters were still being studied, but it's also hypothesized that they evolved in their own unique way due to living in an environment completely different from other living beings. The others, terrified, stammered, "It dodged the arrow." The wolf bared its sharp teeth, eyeing the people there hungrily. It observed them with its keen eyes, moving quickly forward. The young man, his face full of panic, could barely manage to say, "Run quickly." The rest of the group realized there was no way to retreat. The whole group scrambled to run in the opposite direction, trying to escape. But the hardest part now was that they didn't know where to run. One of them said, "If we head down, the monster will." At that moment, someone shouted, "Run up! Head up the mountain!" As everyone scrambled in a panic, desperately trying to escape, Chiron remained still. With his weapon in hand, he stood proudly face to face with the monster. The size difference was clear, but Chiron wasn't backing down. The team members saw this and shouted his name. "Chiron!" He thought to himself, "Don't tell me he's planning to use himself as bait." Meanwhile, Chiron remained fully focused on the fight. He had already released an arrow. The massive creature, with its rough, bumpy skin, barely felt the impact of the arrow. It swiped at him with its claws in retaliation. Using his small size and quick reflexes, Chiron managed to dodge the attack. The creature growled in frustration. Chiron panted heavily, thinking he moves too fast, and its skin is so thick. The only way to keep everyone safe is to lead it away. Facing a giant beast, Chiron remained determined in his original decision. Though it was risky, the creature lunged at him again, but this time, he was lucky enough to escape. Chiron quickly retreated a good distance. Each time he successfully dodged the creature's attacks, it only seemed to make it angrier. Its eyes burned with fury. What Chiron didn't expect, though, was that it suddenly lost interest in attacking him. Turning around, he realized in despair that the creature wasn't after him anymore. It was heading straight for the group he had just been protecting. They still had no idea what horrors were about to unfold. The leader of the group shouted, "Drop everything heavy. Hurry!" The others scrambled to run as fast as they could, but Alter hesitated. He said, "You all go ahead." Lumina turned around and asked, "Alter, what are you doing?" Alter, tears welling up in his eyes, his body trembling, trying to hold himself together, and replied, "Chiron, I can't leave him behind." Lumina felt as if a thunderbolt had struck her. Tears streamed down her face, and she was speechless. She called out his name, Alter. The monster was now dangerously close to Alter, the line between life and death, so incredibly thin in that moment. Alter turned around and saw everything, but what concerned him most was, is Chiron really dead? The more he thought about it, the more panicked he became. Alter blamed himself. "It's my fault I told him to come with us. If I had listened to Chiron when he said to run down." A powerful beam of light suddenly shot straight at the fearsome monster. Alter didn't understand what was happening, but it was clear the monster was in immense pain from the light. Lumina ran up excitedly and said, "It's dead." The others around them asked, "Is that magic?" Chiron, out of breath, rushed over and barely managed to stay. Run quickly. The situation clearly wasn't over yet. The danger was still close, and it was the only thing that could make him panic like this. The monster, which seemed to have died earlier, began to move slowly again. He sat up, quickly regaining his composure, his whole body radiating a sinister, malicious energy. Lumina shuddered. What? It must have just been a flash of light. In an instant, the massive figure charged toward them. By the time they thought of running, it was already too late. Alter noticed something was off. His body wouldn't move. To be sure, he tried to move his legs, but the result was the same. His body was frozen. Lumina pushed herself to run as fast as she could. But under the creature's claws, she was no longer steady enough to continue. In that moment, when death seemed certain, she could have escaped, but she stumbled and fell. Under the sharp claws of the monster, it seemed like there was no hope left, and tears streamed down her face. Chiron was determined not to let his teammates get hurt, so he did everything he could to hold the creature back. Alter shouted his name, Chiron. At the moment when Chiron was caught off guard, the creature retracted its claws to attack him. Its face was filled with fear. In a flash, Chiron used his teleportation skill. The creature, seeing this, panicked and looked up. The same bright flash appeared again, followed by a huge explosion. Lumina shouted loudly, Chiron. The light gathered a tremendous amount of energy. It moved toward the creature and struck deep into its body, weakening the monster. Chiron was confused. Okay, now what do I do? I was planning to push it back after using the light beam, but if I do that, it'll scratch me. I can't leave it in the same position either. Right now, both the creature and I are outside of the numbers. Chiron had an idea, a way to throw it and make it fall. The methods he considered included something that required self-illumination, something that created gravity, and something that disrupted symmetry. Chiron reached out, gently touching his own hand in the other world. I've touched it, he thought. The two hands connected, creating a blinding light. This was the unspoken realm of knowledge. A two-dimensional space vanished, and now only Chiron stood there. He thought, that's mass. The monster, furious, stared at Chiron in confusion. Before it could process what was happening, he struck and sent it flying. But Chiron didn't stop. He continued to advance and attack. The beast howled in rage. In the few brief seconds Chiron affected the wolf, a small spark of light flashed in his mind. Why does this world even exist? Questions kept appearing in his head. What does existence mean? What is mass? Why does matter have mass? He wondered. In front of Chiron, a golden light began to expand, and the space he had dreamed about began to appear. This is a world of lost symmetry, he said. At the same time, cracks suddenly appeared in the space where the light resided. The light grew even more intense. Chiron continued, if the universe existed before everything was born, then the way for everything to exist is by breaking the balance of the universe. He reached out and touched a small crack in the space. The water quickly spread out, and pieces of space shattered like glass, revealing a misty void before Chiron's eyes. It was mass that caused this, and it could be transferred into the photons of light. Back at the moment when he struck the wolf, causing a deafening crash and a strong aftershock that shook the cliffside amidst the dust and smoke, a bright yellow light suddenly appeared in midair. From where the light appeared, a beam of light flowed backward. The image of Chiron kneeling on the ground appeared, moving at his speed so fast it couldn't be seen with the naked eye. He quietly observed the scene in front of him. The rumbling from the aftershock hadn't stopped. Chiron tensed, waiting, his eyes wide and alert, barely daring to breathe, his breaths quick and shallow. Ha ha! It stopped moving. He cautiously looked at the giant wolf, now completely motionless on the ground. Chiron's eyes widened in surprise as if he had realized something. Armin, I understand now. Symmetry can be broken by a type of knowledge of space, something that's yet to be named. There's a mechanism to give mass to matter. If that mechanism is used, light could be given mass. Joy was clear on Chiron's face. Finally, he understood. He stared intently at the creature in front of him. A dangerous beast like this, why would it appear in this mountainous region? Why didn't I think of that? Chiron murmured deep in thought. Suddenly, a terrifying scream cut through his thoughts. Here come the wolves. Chiron quickly turned around, eyes narrowing as he looked up at the top of the cliff. But I'm not alone, he thought to himself. Meanwhile, up on the cliff, Alter and the others were all visibly terrified. Some of them couldn't hold back their tears. In front of them was a pack of werewolves, slowly closing in. Leading the pack was an alpha wolf, its eyes glowing red with malice. The group was being pushed toward the edge of the cliff, their bodies trembling uncontrollably. Without thinking, they kept glancing at Alter, hoping to find some kind of strength in him. Alter! They called out in fear, while Lumina broke down in sobs, crying out in sheer terror, Wah. Alter's face was just as pale, though he tried to hide the rising panic in his eyes. He gritted his teeth and said firmly, I'll run to the other side. You all head down the cliff. A red-haired young man, panic evident on his face, shouted back, Are you crazy? You want to die? Alter snapped back, tension thick in his voice. That's the only way right now. He turned to look at his friends, tears welling in his eyes. You all have to survive so that my and Shirone's sacrifice won't be in vain. As the situation grew more desperate, a flash of light appeared above them, cutting through the darkening sky. From high above, Shirone descended rapidly, using magic to teleport just in time, leaving his friends in stunned silence. Are you okay? Everyone rushed towards him, a mix of joy and worry on their faces. I thought you were dead. Lumina, standing next to him, was crying nonstop, clearly overwhelmed by emotion. Shirone silently looked at his friends for a moment before speaking. I'm sorry, everyone. Shirone. Alter's voice rang out. He bit his lip, trying hard to keep a calm appearance, though his face betrayed his emotions. I'm sorry for making you all worry, Alter. Shirone gently patted him on the shoulder. Leave it to me now. Alter stared at him in surprise before slowly walking towards the pack of wolves. Seeing him head toward the wolves, Alter shouted, Run away too. Shirone. Shirone, unbothered, calmly responded, Fine. Shirone answered with steady confidence. This doesn't go against the rules. He moved forward resolutely, his steps full of determination as he faced the danger ahead. On the opposite side, the bloodthirsty wolf spirits howled and snarled, each one charging towards Shirone and his friends at a terrifying speed. The distance between Shirone and the pack's leader shrank quickly as it charged toward him with reckless force. Shirone didn't flinch. On the contrary, he remained perfectly calm, gathering his energy into a glowing orb in his palm. It's light. Lugana gasped in astonishment, her red hair disheveled and eyes wide, but this time, it felt different from before. In front of them, Shirone let his magical energy surge freely. A magic circle appeared on his forehead as he focused. The energy was directed into photons. The glowing sphere in his hand grew larger and larger. Sensing that enough power had been concentrated, he leaned forward. In an instant, Shirone threw his hand forward, hurling the sphere with force. The sphere shot forward at high speed, leaving a trail of light behind it and a gust of wind in the air as it raced toward the werewolf. Before it had a chance to react, the light sphere struck it in the neck. In an instant, the beam of light pierced through the werewolf's body like an arrow, followed by its agonized howls of pain. This was his magic. He stared wide-eyed in disbelief. I can do it. Another werewolf, seeing its companion sent flying, howled in fury. One by one, the others became agitated and charged at Shirone, targeting him. They lunged with sharp claws extended, ready to tear him apart. But Shirone would never let that happen. He quickly focused his magic, suddenly dodging their attack and leaping into the air, leaving the werewolves confused as they watched him. Shirone created another glowing sphere. In a blink of an eye, his eyes flashed with light as several familiar figures appeared. The sounds of explosions kept ringing out, and a series of lights pierced through the tough bodies of the werewolves like a meteor shower, leaving them no time to retaliate. In the midst of the thick dust and smoke, the pained and helpless roars of the werewolves filled the air. This sight left Alter and his group in stunned silence. One of them unconsciously muttered, That's a mage. Alter quickly filled in the rest. Right before their eyes, Shirone was casting magic, moving nimbly through the battlefield and taking down each werewolf, one by one. After all, this magic drained a large amount of his mental energy. Shirone couldn't help but pant, but he pushed on. As he was catching his breath, a werewolf suddenly charged at him from behind, intending to ambush him. Without hesitation, Shirone used his magic, blasting it away with a burst of light. The werewolf's body trembled as it let out painful groans after being struck. However, it quickly realized that the attack wasn't as powerful as the one that had wounded it earlier. A flash of panic crossed Shirone's eyes. His magic had weakened. On the other side, the cunning werewolf smiled triumphantly. It quickly regained its composure, letting out a loud roar to summon its companions. The other werewolves, after recovering, seemed to have been injected with a surge of aggression, all of them charging forward at once. This sudden change in behavior put the mood of Alter's group in a bad spot. Shirone, it's dangerous. Alter shouted in warning. Run, Lumina screamed loudly. Shirone watched as the pack of werewolves rushed toward him with intense energy, hearing the terrified cries of his friends. A wave of exhaustion swept over him, making his breath heavy and labored. There was only one option left. He furrowed his brow, determined not to give up. Shirone clenched his teeth and focused his mental energy once more, preparing for the battle ahead. Can I really do this? Shirone panted, his brow furrowing as he silently thought, I still have one more option. His eyes gleamed a bright jade green. As he gazed at the swirling vortex before him, he wondered, can I really keep the balance of this powerful whirlpool? Ahead of him, a massive horde of monsters were frantically charging toward him. Alter and Lumina were both panicked. Alter yelled loudly, Shirone, this is too dangerous. Lumina, crying, urged Shirone, please just run. She shouted his name, Shirone. However, Shirone seemed to ignore them. He stood his ground, facing the oncoming wave of monsters without flinching. his gaze sharpened with resolve. Although his face couldn't hide the tension, the sweat dripping from his forehead and his lips tightly pressed together, suddenly Chiron's pupils glowed with a cold, sharp blue light. In the infinite depths of his subconscious, he connected with the immortal energy and ultimate power as vast and limitless as a black hole. From that black hole, a terrifying force was unleashed, pushing even Chiron back with its pressure. He gritted his teeth, holding his hands out in front of him, desperately trying to block the immense magical energy. Chiron's body began to disintegrate into dust from the strain of the force, but he stayed focused, channeling his magic to fight the beasts. In an instant, a surge of supernatural power erupted from Chiron's hands. The vicious creatures charged forward, but they were immediately torn apart by Chiron's overwhelming spiritual energy. His strength crystallized into sharp blue beams, which incinerated the wolf-like monsters into ash. Despite the sheer number of the creatures, it couldn't get past Chiron's power. They couldn't move forward. Witnessing Chiron's terrifying strength, Lumina and the children in the village couldn't help but be stunned. Alter was also shocked by what was happening in front of him. How could this be? He thought to himself. Even though he was seeing it with his own eyes, it still felt unbelievable. Suddenly, a grayish-black werewolf took advantage of the other wolves and rushed forward, extending its sharp claws toward Chiron. Luckily, he managed to use his magic to push it away just in time. However, Chiron himself was beginning to feel like he couldn't hold on much longer. His energy was reaching its limit. If things kept going like this, his life force and mind would scatter like the wind. Then, something clicked in his mind. That's right, just like last time. Chiron remembered what he used his immortal energy to channel into the crystal. His power had gradually flowed through it too. At that time, he had nearly vanished. He tried to recall the actions he had taken to escape the deadly danger when he placed his hand on the glass orb. He needed to release all the energy inside him. Chiron suddenly shouted. With all his strength and a firm will, he said, I'll release everything with this one strike. His hand reached out. Without hesitation, he unleashed the strongest force. He could strike the pack of werewolves. Chiron's power was so intense that the trees around him shook and dust swirled in the whirlwind. The pack of werewolves, charging forward in a frenzy, was completely incinerated by the force of his energy. From Chiron's direction, a brilliant golden light shot straight ahead, sweeping away everything in its path. After a moment, the area gradually returned to calm. A leaf gently fell to the ground, leaving behind an open, clear view. In front of him were the weakened, trembling beastly spirits unable to stand after the devastating blow they had just taken. One werewolf, still stubborn, bared its teeth in a quick snarl. Chiron's figure slowly became clear through the dust. He stood there, coldly staring at the defiant creature. His voice was filled with killing intent. Leave. Chiron glared at it, warning, never come back here. The remaining werewolves, terrified, immediately turned and fled. They carried with them a few survivors, scrambling away without daring to look back. Chiron stood still for a moment, but soon exhaustion began to set in. His body swayed, and eventually he could no longer stay on his feet. He fell backward. Alter rushed forward and caught Chiron just in time. The children in the village saw this and immediately ran over to stand around Chiron. Lugana, with her eyes red from crying, had tears streaming down her face. She gently stroked Chiron's forehead. Alter, looking sad, told everyone, let's go home. He looked at Chiron, breathing heavily and shyly added, this silly hunting trip is over. Night fell, and the dim lights from the simple thatched roofs flickered. On the grassy field, Chiron looked up at the sky, admiring the shimmering, magical stars. Alter slowly walked over and sat next to him, slightly smiling. He asked Chiron, when did you come out here? Chiron looked at Alter and smiled back. After a really deep sleep, I suddenly just wanted to look at the stars. Alter sat down beside him, nodding slowly, oh. Chiron thought back. It had been so long since he'd slept that deeply. He couldn't even remember the last time he had a peaceful sleep without nightmares or strange visions. But as soon as he opened his eyes, he saw the children from the village gathered around his bed, crying uncontrollably as soon as they saw he was awake. Chiron, confused, asked, where am I? Lumina, sobbing, said, we thought you wouldn't wake up. Chiron felt really moved. He had slept so soundly, like he was dead. The others hadn't left his side for a moment until he woke up. Thinking about this, he turned to ask Alter and the others, where are they? Alter explained, they're busy in the kitchen. Alter told Chiron about what happened after he passed out. Anyway, it was such a relief. Except for Lumina falling, no one got hurt. Still, we were all pretty shocked by your strength. Chiron smiled softly, feeling relieved. Alter looked up at the sky, speaking casually. Tomorrow, I'll deal with everything with the adults. The skin and teeth of those monsters are worth a lot. Then, Alter absent-mindedly asked Chiron, what did you say they're called again? Chiron replied, werewolves. I heard their fangs are really expensive. Hearing that, Alter smiled and said, right. After a brief silence, Alter awkwardly said to Shirone, I'm sorry, Shirone. That was a bit strange. Shirone, feeling confused, asked, huh? No, Alter didn't look at Shirone. His gaze drifted off into the distance as he quietly added, actually, I'm just jealous of you. Shirone froze. Huh? Alter remembered a winter day when the snow was falling heavily. Shirone was sitting alone, deeply focused on reading a book. Alter, Lumina, and the village kids happened to walk by, and a boy wearing glasses spoke up, saying, sometimes Shirone looks really cool. I wonder why. When Alter heard that, he couldn't help but glance at Shirone. Shirone's thoughtful and serious expression truly made him seem special to those around him, even sparking a bit of envy. Alter awkwardly spoke to Shirone, saying, your dream. Shirone looked confused and asked, my dream? Alter nodded. Yeah, the dream you're chasing. At this point, Alter blushed, embarrassed, and avoided Shirone's gaze. He nervously added, I hope you achieve it. Hearing Alter's sincere words, Shirone smiled brightly. He happily said, yeah, thanks. The two of them sat together like that, with the stars shining brightly in the sky, creating a peaceful scene. The next morning in the small village, Luna regretfully said, Shirone, are you leaving so soon? Why not stay for one more day? Shirone shook hands with Alter and, with a hint of reluctance, replied, I wish I could, but I still have a lot of research to finish at the academy. Alter understood and didn't try to stop him. Well, see you again, Shirone. Alter, standing at the front of the group of village kids, sincerely wished Shirone become a great mage. Shirone smiled and responded, I'll come back to visit you all. See you later. Suddenly, Luna rushed towards Shirone. She hugged him tightly and, with a sniffle, said, you have to come back, okay. If you become a mage and ignore me, I'll never forgive you. Shirone laughed. I remember now. He waved goodbye to everyone. Take care. The kids in the village waved back at him. Alter placed a hand on Lumina's shoulder and said, wow, look at you. Your eyes are all red from crying. He teased her. If you missed him that much, should I go after him and bring him back for you? Luna wiped her tears and muttered softly, what? He's not gone forever, is he? She looked up and watched Shirone's figure disappear into the distance, her voice filled with admiration. Shirone is so cool. Every time he chased his dreams, Luna kept her eyes on his back, following him until he was out of sight behind the distant houses. After leaving the village, Shirone carried his bag and made his way to a place called Esta's. He took out a book to read. As he flipped through it, he remembered a time when he had asked, hey Need, there's something I've been wondering. How are we supposed to find our research team's room out of the 89 buildings here? Need had explained, since you're new to the team, I'll show you how to find your way. Need pointed toward the corner of the room. He asked Shirone, do you see the number on the ceiling? Shirone replied, it's 19. Need continued to guide him. Now you need to look at the color of the door. Remembering this, Shirone turned his head to the right, where there was a yellow door. He quickly jotted down the key features he noticed while carefully thinking through the details. Room 19, yellow door, that's number 5. So he took a few more steps, mumbling to himself, then I'll reach a fork in the path. Shirone looked left and right, making an observation. So that means there are 3 different paths that connect to this place, right? He quickly wrote everything down in his notebook and did some calculations. Then he needed to replace those values with 10, I, and Z, and then set up an equation. The answer to that equation is what we call the master key, Estas. He still remembered the look of surprise on his face when he first heard Need's instructions. Who would have thought of something like this? Impressive, really. I heard one of the founding members has a condition related to obsessive intellect. He's the one who came up with this equation. That person memorized all of Estas and stored it in something. Need squinted and said, the first time I showed a rookie this equation, he said, the temporary recollection has ended. Shirone opened the purple door. He glanced inside. A hallway leads to a room with 2 doorways on either side. Shirone exclaims, truly, this is a perfect equation. He walks toward the room at the end of the hall. A sign hangs on the door, Supernatural Spiritual Science Research Team. Before entering the room, Shirone hears someone speaking loudly, questioning, why are you revealing this now? Didn't I tell you there was a 57% chance of success? The person being questioned doesn't back down, quickly retorting, that's nonsense. I've wasted so much time just listening to you. The other person protests. Don't you understand? The bigger the sample, the higher the accuracy. The first one angrily shouts back, that only works if you have unlimited money. You're crazy. Shirone grips the doorknob and turns it gently. In his hand is a notebook filled with equations. He thinks to himself, just like piecing together clues to find the research team through the slowly opening door. He reflects, I've also learned that I need the root causes, the valuable connections, and every moment beside me. Through this, I can take one step at a time. Behind the door, Need and Aruki are having an intense argument. Shirone greeted both of them, saying, "So you guys are back after losing everything?" As soon as Aruki saw Shirone, he quickly called out to him, "Shirone, listen to what I have to say, and then you'll understand." Shirone smiled quietly, and when he didn't say anything and just kept smiling, Aruki, confused, asked, "Why is he just standing there, smiling like that?" Inside, Shirone was overwhelmed with a deep sense of gratitude. "Thank you, everyone, for everything." With that thought, he beamed brightly and said, "I'm back." At Training Field 48, Shirone used one hand to channel his magical energy, shaping it into a glowing golden sphere. Need, with his hands behind his head, curiously asked, "Is this the glow you're talking about? Did you increase its power somehow?" Aruki, standing next to Need, shook his head, saying, "No, something else." Aruki pointed out the difference in the way Shirone was using the light magic. Normally, it would radiate outward, but this time it was drawing inward. Need, noticing this, was taken aback. Suddenly, Shirone unleashed a powerful strike, shattering the large rock in front of him. The overwhelming power made Need and Aruki stare in shock, both of them gasping in disbelief. "What is that?" Need ran over to check the crack in the rock, his voice full of astonishment. "Used light to create a hole? This is definitely magic. It's real magic." Aruki asked, "What about the incantations I used?" Need awkwardly smiled and replied, "Oh, that was just a joke of mine." Shirone explained, "This is an incantation I developed." He said slowly, "I call it the Luminary Cannon." Aruki stroked his chin, looking thoughtful. "A photon? As far as I know, that's a kind of fusion. Fusion is the perfect combination of two different concepts. And when it comes to photons, everything becomes complicated. What kind of spell is this?" Shirone suggested, "I'll explain, but can we go somewhere else first?" Shirone mysteriously added, "There's something else I want to tell you guys." At a restaurant outside the academy, Aruki stared wide-eyed, his face filled with disbelief as he stammered, Is this for real?" Needy, sitting beside him, was equally stunned. He turned to Shirone and asked, "You added mass to a photon? That's impossible. Can you do the same with a neutrino?" Need was no longer interested in eating. He put his fork down and, still in shock, turned to Shirone. "It's amazing that you can add mass to a particle that has no mass to begin with." Need wiped the sweat from his forehead. He still couldn't believe what he had just heard. "My head is spinning like I'm in a daze." "Did you really manage to use it? A new kind of knowledge, perhaps?" Shirone replied casually, and thanks to that, the discomfort faded away. "Finally, I understand the meaning behind those nightmares that haunted me." Hearing him, Need couldn't help but feel a sense of joy. He marveled, "That's incredible. If you could reorganize the knowledge and theories and then make it a reality, it would shake the magical world." "No, scratch that. It would shake the whole world." Aruki still seemed a bit uncertain. "Yes, it is amazing, but just understanding the theory behind it doesn't mean you can use quantum magic. Even if you reach a level of complete enlightenment, getting others to understand it like you do is a whole different challenge." Need broke into a sweat. This really was bigger than they had imagined. Shirone spoke slowly. "That's why I want to ask you both something." He smiled as he shared his thoughts with Need and Aruki. "I want to learn more, but since it's vacation, we can't go to the library, right? I can't go to the Noble's library by myself. You both take me there." Need, worried, asked, "Shirone, it's not really a problem, but why can't you go in? Does it have something to do with what you were about to say earlier?" At Need's question, Shirone lowered his eyelids, falling silent for a moment. "If I tell them the truth, will they still treat you the same way? But if I keep it all to myself, they can never truly be my real friends." He looked up at his two close friends. After carefully considering it, he finally made up his mind. "No, I won't run away anymore." Shirone decided to tell the truth to Sone and Aruki. "I'm not a noble, I'm just an ordinary person." When Aruki heard this, he was shocked. Every word Shirone said hit him like a bolt of lightning, reminding him of the time when he was a baby. "I was abandoned in a stable, and then my current parents found me and raised me. My father is just a regular hunter." After Shirone shared his past, the three of them, Need, Aruki, and Shirone, fell silent. No one said a word to each other. A while later, Need spoke up, breaking the strange silence. "I was wondering why your attitude suddenly turned so dark recently." "So what?" Aruki cut in gloomily. "What do you mean, so what?" Need turned to glare at Aruki. Aruki coldly responded, "Need, don't you understand what this bastard just said?" The veins on Aruki's forehead bulged, and he angrily shouted, "Whether it's magic or academics, that doesn't mean this guy only started learning a year ago, does it? In just 3 months, he made it to the 5th grade and even beat me in front of the whole school." Need and Shirone stared in shock as Aruki yelled out, even though he had a disability. And on top of that, He was talking about dating genius sorceress. Need quickly covered Aruki's mouth, stopping him from causing more chaos. With a bright smile, Need turned to Shirone and said, Shirone, your background doesn't matter to us. Need in a heart shape with his hands, winked at Shirone and added to me, you're the one and only. I love you so much. Shirone paused for a moment, then tears of joy started to fall from his eyes. He happily said, thank you guys. Haruki scoffed and teased. So, what's all this about loving someone so much? Are you gay or something? Wait, does Amy know about this? Need, curious, turned to Shirone and asked, how long have you two known each other? Shirone sighed and answered, well, since we were kids. At first, things weren't that great between us. Need, excited, urged, come on, tell us the story. I'm super curious. Flashback to 5 years ago in the capital of the kingdom of Thormia, in the town of Bashuka. In a slum called Radom, a filthy, ragged child with a piece of moldy bread in hand was running for his life. Behind him, a group of people with angry faces, armed with knives and sticks, chased after him. Their shouts echoed, you little bastard, you dare steal from us. Do you want to die? Canis ran, breathing heavily. After a short while, he stumbled, his steps slow and tired, until he finally entered a damp, foul-smelling place. He called out, Erin. In a rundown room, a frail little girl was lying on an old wooden board. Canis gently called, Erin. Her face was pale, and she struggled to breathe. Canis rushed to her side, panic in his voice. What's wrong? Are you in a lot of pain? As he asked, Canis pulled out a piece of bread he had stolen and handed it to her. Look, it's bread. You can't die, okay? Tears filled his eyes as he desperately cried out, please someone help. Just as he turned around, the 3 men who had been chasing him stood right behind him, their faces twisted in cruelty. Got you now. Without warning, one of the men slapped him hard. Canis' frail body was thrown back from the force. He screamed in agony as the men laughed mockingly, their voices full of cold malice. Canis thought to himself, this is a place I should never have been found. Weak and struggling, Canis tried to shield himself from the relentless kicks of the large man. Between the punches and kicks, the man spat insults at him, you little brat. Where did you think you could run? Canis felt helpless. I've been found now, he thought. The brutal man picked up the bread that Canis had stolen, tearing it into pieces and shoving them into his mouth, chewing loudly. He mocked Canis mercilessly. Canis, you're trash. How dare you steal this precious meat just to eat it by yourself? He said, laughing with pleasure. Behind him, a big muscular man tossed Erin over his shoulder. The violent man kicked Canis in the face, cursing at him. You're just a filthy little brat. Canis, full of rage, shouted. I'll kill you if you touch Erin, he cursed. I'll kill all of you. To the crude men, the threat from a mere kid was nothing more than a joke. They laughed loudly as if they heard the funniest thing in the world. Do you hear that? He says he's going to kill us. One of them sat down, mocking Canis. Try it. Maybe in your next life, he sneered. Then he nodded toward a blond man. Why are you waiting? Finish him off. The blond man raised a sharp knife in his hand, ready to stab Canis. He stared at the blade, his hatred growing as he thought, if only I had the strength. Erin, seeing his brother about to die, was devastated and cried bitterly. At that moment, Canis only wished, if only he could. He glanced at the 3 bastards in front of him. Just then, the 3 men suddenly froze. A strange, dark smoke appeared out of nowhere. The black smoke suddenly struck, and in the blink of an eye, it claimed the lives of all 3 large, muscular men. They screamed in terror. What the hell is this? Canis remained still, his eyes wide as he stared at the strange scene before him. The blood of the 3 men splattered onto his face. He was stunned, wondering to himself, what's going on? A bloodshot film covered his eyes, his pupils contracted, showing that he was gripped by sheer terror. After dealing with the 3 men, the black shadow coiled around Erin and lifted her into the air. Erin lay motionless within the mysterious black smoke. Slowly, the smoke lowered her back down, gently placing her into Canis' arms. The black shadow began to slowly gather together. Before long, a figure emerged from the dark mist. Canis stared at the person in front of him as a strange, hoarse voice echoed in his ears. What do you think? The figure before Canis had a horrifying face with pure white eyes and a mouth stretched in a dark red grin that reached his ears. He spoke to Canis. Isn't magic fun? Fresh blood dripped from the shadow's mouth onto Canis' face. Suddenly, Canis broke into a manic smile. His smile was all the agreement the shadow needed. In the capital of the kingdom of Thormia, Bashuka, the city lit up as night fell. On the roof of a building across from the museum, a dark figure silently observed the museum from above. That figure was none other than Canis. He commented on how the security force here was really impressive. Indeed, the guards took turns patrolling around the museum nonstop. This is the first time I've seen so many sacred relics like this. Their archaeological value is enormous, Aaron said in awe. Canis, of course, knew the value of those artifacts. He asked Aaron, what about our target? Aaron responded, our target is the core of the mana control system, the sacred relic known as the Dragon Heart. She revealed that it's located inside the central chamber on the 3rd floor. There are about 15 security personnel guarding it. Aaron specifically warned, however, before you get your hands on the sacred relic, the core of the mana control system, you can't use any magic inside the building. Canis thought for a moment. So, no magic, huh? That means I'll have to go in myself. Aaron reminded him, yeah, be careful, Canis. Canis just gave a cold smile. With lightning speed, he leaped through the museum. In the darkness of the night, Canis moved like a shadow. He immediately released his dark magic, which manifested as huge black serpents of mana, easily piercing through the museum's walls. Canis charged straight at the museum's glass doors. Without hesitation, he shattered the glass and stormed in, leaving the security guards in shock. What the hell? Someone's breaking in. Hearing the security guards shouting, Canis's gaze sharpened, his eyes burning with a deadly aura. He spoke in a low, cold voice. Right now, using his magic, the cursed ring he wore eliminated all the security personnel in his way. Against Canis's power, the security guards were thrown forcefully, crashing into the walls. They were stunned, muttering, how is he using magic? In the blink of an eye, Canis had taken down nearly all the security guards, leaving only a few struggling weakly to stop him. One of them rushed in, hitting the alarm button, shouting, he's a mage. Aaron urged him, hurry up. Immediately, Canis increased his speed. With minimal effort, he easily knocked aside anyone trying to block his path. It wasn't long before he reached the door leading to the mana control core. Without hesitation, he broke down the door and charged in. Canis thought to himself, found it. He quickly grabbed hold of the core of the mana control system. After securing the core, Canis scanned the room. Behind him, the security guards had arrived. They shouted, over here, realizing that Canis had taken the core. One of the guards, horrified, gasped, the core of the mana control system is... Before he could finish his sentence, the security officer was knocked unconscious by a burst of dark magic. Not just him, but the other security officers also collapsed one by one. Slow footsteps approached Canis. The person walking exuded a powerful aura of dark magic. Canis glanced at him and calmly said, perfect timing, Aaron. It turned out that the one approaching was Aaron. She looked around briefly, then turned her gaze to Canis and asked, Canis, wait, you didn't kill anyone, right? Canis reassured her, don't worry. He pointed at the security officers lying unconscious on the floor and said, I just knocked them out. Suddenly, a loud explosion echoed. Outside the museum, a group of guards had surrounded the area. A middle-aged man's voice rang out, full of anger. I don't know how you managed to bypass the mana control system and use magic, but this ends now. The man, dressed in a suit, his eyes burning with fury, was channeling fire magic. He declared forcefully, if you don't return everything you've taken, you will be leaving here. In the thick smoke and flames, two shadowy figures stood firm, representing a chilling presence. Canis and Aaron stood motionless, coldly staring at the suited man. Canis gradually manifested. Before long, both Canis and Aaron had fully appeared in front of him. The man in the suit was taken aback. He stammered, Dark Sorcerer. Immediately after, Canis unleashed a powerful wave of dark energy, completely overwhelming the man in the suit. He struggled to raise both hands in defense. Not long after, as the man began to regain his composure, Canis and Aaron had vanished without a trace. Stunned, he asked, did they disappear? Below, a soldier hurriedly reported to the man in the suit, Commander, the core of the mana control system has been stolen. The man in the suit immediately ordered, there's no sign of a teleportation spell. They must still be nearby. Find them now. The soldier shouted, yes, sir. The man in the suit frowned. He couldn't make sense of it. The two didn't appear to be very old. How could they possibly bypass the mana control system and steal a core? He laid it in front of the museum, still burning, deep in thought. Not to mention they were incredibly clever. How could they possibly use dark magic here? Suddenly, the man in the suit remembered there was only one person, only one sorcerer who could wield this kind of magic. He recalled that dark magic could swallow even the light of the sun. A notorious sorcerer, he plunged an entire kingdom into chaos with darkness that no light could ever hope to banish. The great wizard Victor Arcane. As the thought crossed his mind, the man in the suit broke out in a cold sweat. But wasn't he supposed to have died in that accident 40 years ago? So why was someone using his magic now? The city museum had endured a restless night. In the mountains near Bashuka, two people in black cloaks walked side by side. These two were none other than the ones who had just stolen the Canis and Aaron cores. They entered a strange room where in the center, a glass coffin held the core in its hands. Canis spoke respectfully. We've obtained the final ingredient, master. The figure in the coffin was none other than the great wizard Victor Arcane. Canis placed the core into a mechanism and whispered, "With this ingredient, master," Aaron murmured, swallowing nervously. As Canis placed the core into its rightful spot, he said, "You'll regain the glory of being a grand sorcerer." In an instant, a deafening explosion rang out. Canis and Aaron quickly covered their faces with their hands. As the dust cleared, Canis couldn't hide his overwhelming joy. A gnarled hand reached out from the coffin, gripping the edge tightly. Moments later, Arcane's raspy voice echoed, "It's been 40 years. Finally, I can see you again." Aaron trembled, kneeling in the corner. Arcane growled, "The bastard who stole my power." Canis looked up, a smile of relief on his face. Finally, Arcane lifted his gaze, filled with hatred, and snarled, "Alfus, you traitor." 40 years ago, amidst a raging fire, Arcane's scream of fury pierced through the flames. No, he wasn't ready to accept it. He howled, "This research doesn't belong to you. I poured my heart and soul into it." Arcane screamed, his voice filled with madness. "Alfus, how could you do this to me?" Alfus stood with his back to Arcane, silent for a moment before slowly turning and asking, "Why?" In the heart of the blazing inferno, Alfus slowly turned around, his eyes filled with tears, a wild, twisted grin spreading across his face. He grinned maniacally, coldly declaring, "This research." Before he could finish his sentence, Alfus turned his back completely, walking away, leaving Arcane behind in the fire. Arcane screamed in desperation. "Alfus!" The flames slowly began to scorch Arcane's clothes. Before long, the fierce flames completely engulfed Arcane. He thrashed around desperately, but it was useless. His fate had been sealed, and he was meant to be buried in that sea of fire. Now having been resurrected, Arcane looked down at his hands, still marked with burn scars, the clearest evidence that he had once died in those flames. Arcane's voice was filled with rage as he spoke. "It took me 40 years to recover." 40 years. As he said this, he clenched his fist tightly. His eyes burned with an intense killing intent. He ground out each word. "Alfus, do you think you can live in peace after what you've done to me?" Seated on the highest throne, Arcane sat with a commanding presence. Below him, Aaron and Canis knelt respectfully. Aaron greeted him with a deep bow, saying, "Master." Beside him, Canis also bowed, speaking with reverence, "Thanks to you, we are alive today and we have gained immense power. Please command us. These 2 lowly lives are yours to do with as you wish." Arcane glanced at Canis and Aaron, his voice deep and measured. "I will place my trust in you." His eyes then moved to Aaron, who trembled in fear. After that, he looked at Canis. His voice was rough but filled with authority. "My dear disciples, be cautious." He warned them further. "But you must be careful. There was a time when Alfus was blinded by greed, ready to kill anyone to achieve his goals. He is a mad, bloodthirsty killer." At that moment in Alfus' office, thunder cracked outside and heavy rain poured down, with raindrops sliding down the window pane. Alfus slowly rose from behind his desk. He moved to the bookshelf, paused for a moment in thought, and finally, Alfus reached out and pulled a book from the shelf. Instantly, the bookshelf split open, revealing a hidden passage. Alfus took a lantern, slowly stepping into the passage. He placed the lantern next to a picture frame. Alfus turned to look outside, muttering, "The sky is starting to light up with lightning." His voice carried a sense of nostalgia, like it did back then. As he spoke, Alfus placed the pocket watch he always carried on the shelf. Standing in front of the portrait of his late friend, Alfus said quietly, "Never forgive me." Meanwhile, in Bashuka, dark clouds covered the sky and rain poured down on the city, casting a gloomy shade over the scene. At the weekly academic meeting organized by the Kingdom's Professors Association, in the Grand Hall, the most renowned figures had gathered in a group, discussing passionately. While everyone else was eagerly debating, Thad sat quietly in his seat, gently scratching his head. He understood now why all the teachers tried to avoid this meeting. How could they debate for 3 straight days? Thad's face was pale, his eyes were dark and tired, and inside, he felt like screaming. He just wanted to go home. Thad was present at the academic meeting as a representative of the Alfus Academy of Magic. Looking at the group huddled together, he thought, "They're really impressive." Even though the debate had officially ended some time ago, they continued discussing things after the dinner. Holding a glass of wine, Thad's face was flushed, not really from the alcohol, but from his thoughts. He silently thought to himself, "The only reason I'm still here is to talk to her." Thad kept his eyes on Ryan, watching her through the crowd. He quietly murmured to himself, "Her name's Ryan Ogent, right?" He mentally ran through her credentials. She was one of the top 99 artists and a royal musical prodigy, a student of the Master Marchand. Thad stole a glance at Ryan, his mind racing. "I can't believe she doesn't seem bothered by being surrounded by so many people. I can't even find a chance to talk to her." If only I could be half as composed as she is. While Thad was lost in thought, Raina suddenly turned around and looked at him. Their eyes met by chance. Thad froze for a moment and muttered, "Ah." He immediately spit out the drink he had been sipping, panicking as he thought, "What's going on? She's looking at me? No way." Before Thad could fully process it, Raina took the initiative and started a conversation with him. "Nice to meet you," she said. Professor Thad was completely taken aback. He awkwardly asked, "Huh? You? How do you know who I am?" Raina smiled and replied, "Of course. You're the professor from the Alfus Academy of Magic, aren't you?" She even invited him to her home. Her mansion, the Ojid estate, was also in Kreese. When Thad heard Raina invite him over, he was flustered, his words coming out clumsily. "Oh, really?" Inside, he was overjoyed beyond belief. He couldn't believe he had a chance to talk to her. Could it be that she? As he thought about it, Thad's face turned bright red like a tomato. He daydreamed about a future where he and Raina were happily married and then had children. He imagined himself gently asking her, "What should we name our child?" And she would smile back at him, replying, "How's Shirone doing these days?" The unexpected answer made Thad feel embarrassed. "Huh?" Suddenly, it was like a bolt of lightning struck straight into Thad's ear. He cursed under his breath, "Dan." In an instant, his mind started racing. The name Arian Shirone, he'd seen it before. On the day of the entrance exams, he paid special attention to that name because this person was staying at the Ojin house. Thinking about it now, Thad broke into a cold sweat, so it was a parent meeting. As if it were second nature, Thad immediately flipped the switch and slipped into professor mode. He straightened up, adopting the graceful demeanor of a gentleman. With perfectly measured words, he said, "You've entrusted us with an exceptionally talented student. He's a true pride of this school." Hearing Thad speak so highly of Shirone, Raina brightened up. "Oh, really? That's wonderful. Does he have a lot of friends?" Thad nodded, looking pleased with himself. He's well known among both the boys and the girls. Even upperclassmen respect him. I'm a little envious, to be honest. Oh, and by the way, he has a girlfriend, too. She's pretty well known among the students as well. When Thad mentioned that, Raina's expression suddenly darkened. Thad quickly added, "But don't worry. He's focusing on his studies, so there's nothing to worry about there." Raina forced a smile, but her voice couldn't hide the dissatisfaction. "So it sounds like things are going really well for him, huh?" "That's great," Thad thought, realizing he might have said something he shouldn't have. "Is there anything you'd like to tell him?" "If you tell me, I will." Before Thad could finish his sentence, Raina cut him off. "It's okay. Just hearing that he's doing well is enough for me." Noticing the sudden change in Raina's expression, Thad quickly tried to reassure her. "You don't need to worry, it's nothing to brag about, but the Magic Academy is a wonderful school, officially recognized by the kingdom." Thad emphasized, "We will do our best, so please don't worry." Seeing how earnest and caring Thad was, Raina was slightly taken aback. "Oh," but she quickly smiled warmly and gently said, "Thank you so much. Please take good care of Shirone." Raina's smile was as warm as the morning sun, leaving Thad almost speechless. He was completely mesmerized by her sweetness. After a few seconds of hesitation, Thad finally gathered the courage to speak. "Meeting like this feels like fate. Would you like to come back to Kreese with me tomorrow? I'd also love to invite you to lunch." Raina happily agreed. "Oh, that sounds wonderful." She added, "But I do have to attend a performance at Bashuka." Thad, trying to be confident, suggested, "I wonder if I'd be allowed to come watch." Raina nodded. "I'd be honored if you could be there." Inside, Thad was celebrating. "Yahoo!" Raina seemed a bit hesitant as she said, "To be honest, I'm still worried that there will be few people attending because of the recent events in the capital," she said. Thad, showing concern, asked, "What events?" "Well, the most recent one." She furrowed her brows slightly and hesitated before continuing. "The Hellgate was attacked and a level B prisoner escaped. The person behind it is an unknown dark sorcerer. Because of that, the capital is practically under martial law right now." As Raina explained this, Thad's expression darkened immediately. He opened his mouth and then paused, his voice trembling slightly as he asked, "Did you just say it was a dark sorcerer?" "Yes," Raina replied, nodding. Thad quickly composed himself and asked, "Could you tell me more about this?" Raina thought for a moment. "Well, I heard it's an old man with white hair, and as she described him, Thad suddenly realized who she was talking about. The world around him seemed to grow dark. Without saying another word, Thad bent down and hurriedly told Raina, "I'm sorry. I have to leave." Raina was confused and asked, "Huh?" Without wasting another second, Thad turned and rushed out. Raina called after him, "Thad, where are you suddenly going, Professor Thad?" As Thad ran, his mind raced through the recent events, the dark sorcerer, the escaped prisoner. He gritted his teeth, no longer having any doubts. That was his plan. Damn, why does it always have to happen when I'm away? The night before at the infernal prison, a fire had broken out. Inside the prison, bodies were scattered everywhere, and one person was being strangled by dark magic. He struggled in vain, and before long, the power of darkness had squeezed the life out of him. The dark magic turned into a sharp spear, piercing through the body of the unfortunate man. The one responsible for these horrific deaths was none other than Arcane, along with his two loyal disciples. Dark magic has two key traits: absorption and fusion. While reflecting on these teachings, Canis watched a tiny ant crawling across the ground. The darkness absorbs energy and fuses it into a single attribute. Canis thought deeply, his gaze becoming distant. He extended his finger, blocking the path of the ant. In his mind, Canis seriously considered that the dark energy his mental strength received might cause minor damage. With this thought, Canis suddenly released his magic and crushed the ant. But he watched as the remaining ants desperately tried to crawl as far away from him as possible. They struggled, inching their way out of the darkness, trying to escape his dark magic. In that moment, he realized that darkness could never defeat light. A voice, old and wise, came from behind Canis. "Well done, Canis." Startled, he turned around and found Arcane standing behind him. Canis softly called out, "Master." In Canis' mind, this was the person who would save both him and Aaron from hell itself. "Great mage," Arcane said, looking at Canis. His voice grew serious. "If you try just a little harder." As he spoke, Arcane tacked his staff onto the ground. Immediately, dark magic spread out, powerful and overwhelming, flooding the area. No matter how far the ants crawled, they couldn't escape the fierce magic. In an instant, the darkness ruled everything. Canis heard Arcane's hoarse yet commanding voice in his ear. "You'll be able to drown out the light." As Arcane taught, Canis smiled a twisted smile, his eyes burning with a deep, deadly energy. The darkness in his eyes and that wicked grin had grown with him over the years. Now as a young man, the darkness in his soul had not changed one bit. Before Canis, the ground was littered with bodies, their agonized moans filling the air. "Help me!" The desperate screams of the victims only seemed to excite the demon inside Canis even more. He became increasingly brutal, killing without a hint of emotion. The cries of anguish echoed everywhere. "Help!" Canis' magic cut through his victims like sharp blades, leaving them disfigured and dead. Watching her brother's merciless actions, Aaron stood behind him and softly reminded him, "Canis, this has nothing to do with avenging Master. Do we really need to go this far?" Without turning around to look at her, Canis coldly responded, "Aaron, all we need to do is trust Master." The corners of his mouth curled slightly. "You know that." He turned to face Aaron, his voice firm and unwavering. "Master never does anything pointless." Hearing her brother's words, Aaron lowered her gaze and softly replied, "Yeah, I understand, Canis." In Aaron's eyes, Canis had become a demon with a cruel smile. The three of them stood still, coldly watching the bloody slaughter unfold. After wiping out most of the prison guards, Canis and his two disciples slowly made their way inside the prison. The building was solidly constructed, but Arcane only needed to wave his hand for the strong iron door to snap open. The prisoners were set free, and one of them, stunned, explained, "Your skills are impressive." The prisoner sneered, speaking to Canis with a mocking tone. "Thanks a lot. Are you a mage?" The prisoner saw Arcane walking in with Canis and Aaron and mocked him. "Why is he bringing kids along? Going for a stroll or something?" He reached out his hand to introduce himself. "Nice to meet you. I'm the Night Cat, Kraken. You know me, right?" Arcane looked at Kraken's dirty hand with disdain. He clicked his tongue, and his eyes grew cold and sharp, a deadly aura seeping from every word he spoke. "Finally, I step into the field myself, and all I find are a bunch of kids." The other prisoners, hearing Arcane's insult, grew angry and started shouting. What did he say? Did that old man just call us kids? They had no sense of fear and boldly charged toward Arcane. "So what if you're a mage? We'll crush you with numbers." "Capture him." Before they could get close, the area around them suddenly went pitch black. The prisoners panicked and backed up, huddling together in fear. They screamed in confusion. "What's going on? Why is it so dark? I can't see anything. Hey, the walls are getting closer." Indeed, the walls on both sides were closing in, slowly crushing the prisoners in between. Before long, their screams echoed through the darkness, filled with desperation. "What? Is this for real? What's happening? Shit, we need to get out of here. Don't push any further. We can't escape. Shit, damn it." The scene was terrifying beyond imagination. Erin bit her lip, lowering her head and unable to look any longer. The blood from the prisoners splattered everywhere. After a brief silence, a person with shackles on their legs, sitting in the corner of the room, spoke up. It was Arcane. "Is this all part of a scheme?" He emphasized, "You've hidden yourself very well." The man with the shackles frowned and stared at Arcane, clicking his tongue. His hands were chained, and on his shoulder, there was a tattoo of an American parrot. It was Lucas. Realizing that Arcane had spotted him, he stopped hiding. Lucas stepped forward, muttering to himself, "Oh no, caught! You crazy bastards! Why are you doing this to the people here?" Canis and Aaron remained silent. Looking at him, Arcane observed Lucas carefully and then asked, "Are you planning to go against the kingdom?" When he didn't hear an answer from Arcane, Lucas laughed loudly. "Seems like that's exactly what you're doing, huh?" Aaron and Canis' faces tightened with tension. Lucas lightly leaped into the air, his eyes full of murderous intent as he charged directly at Arcane. He threw a spiked mace toward Arcane, but the old man remained calm, standing still. Lucas was momentarily stunned. It was as if he couldn't even touch him. The mace had been held in place by Arcane's magic, but Lucas couldn't sense any magic at all. He just went by his instincts and quickly concluded that the attack had been absorbed. He wondered to himself, who the hell is this old man? At that moment, Arcane spoke in a deep voice, "You've passed." Lucas laughed. "What's wrong with you?" He looked at Arcane confused. "I didn't even apply to you guys." Arcane didn't say anything. He simply turned and walked away. His magic shot straight toward Lucas. Panicking, Lucas raised his hands to defend himself, thinking, "Damn, this is bad." But surprisingly, Arcane's magic wasn't meant to kill him. Instead, it broke the chains around Lucas's body. Arcane's eerie voice echoed, "Money is your weakness." Arcane then directly made an offer. "I'll give you a job that'll earn you a lot of money." He asked, "Are you interested?" Lucas grinned slyly. "Now you get me." Canis silently watched Lucas, his gaze unconsciously showing signs of discomfort. Outside, the rain was pouring heavily and a carriage struggled through the downpour. Thad sat inside, anxiously urging the driver, "Can't you go any faster? Hurry up, I've given you all the gold coins I had." The driver turned around, looking uneasy. "No matter how fast I go, we won't reach Kreese until tomorrow morning." Hearing this, Thad grew frustrated. He gritted his teeth, slammed his hand on the side of the carriage, and cursed, "Damn." Outside the car, he could only feel helpless. "Oh my God, what am I even doing at this hour?" Inside the car, Thad rubbed his forehead, his mind in complete chaos. Arcane had been freed from his prison last night. He frowned, thinking about what would come next. The man would appear to seek revenge for the events that happened 40 years ago. He needed to hurry and report this to his master. At the Alfus Academy of Magic, the rainy night added to the desolate, gloomy atmosphere. Lucas had changed into a new set of clothes and muttered, "It's so cold." Looking down from above at Alfus Academy, Canis stood beside him, coldly telling him, "Stop complaining." He then added, "Just stick to the agreement." Lucas smiled and responded to Canis, "Make sure I get a big reward for this." He frowned, thinking, "If I'd known you guys would do something crazy like ambush the Magic Academy." While Lucas grumbled, Arcane soared high into the sky, silently observing the entire Alfus Academy below. His gaze was full of intense hatred. Below, Lucas was still muttering, "I should have never followed you guys." In a rainy night, Arcane flew silently above, his murderous intent clear in his eyes. The heavy rain only made the already eerie atmosphere of the academy feel even colder and more desolate. Lucas crossed his arms, feeling frustrated, and muttered to himself, "Damn, I have nothing else to do and follow them because they promised a lot of money. But this is basically like treason." He glanced over at Aaron, who seemed like the last person who would be involved in something like this. He teasingly said to her, "You're way too beautiful to be doing something like this, like a filthy criminal. Ever thought about coming with me instead?" When Lucas made that comment about his sister, Canis couldn't hold back and interrupted, "Lucas, your job is to watch the hostage." He coldly reminded him, "Just do the job you were hired for." Lucas raised an eyebrow and asked, "Oh, and who's the hostage?" Canis didn't want to waste any more words on him and quickly answered, "You'll find out tomorrow morning." Lucas didn't like Canis' attitude at all. He clicked his tongue in annoyance, muttering, "Tetch." Canis didn't have much fondness for Lucas either. He was irritated, thinking to himself, why did the master bring someone like him along? Then, a sinister voice echoed in Lucas' mind, sternly warning him, "Stay silent and don't question anything. Everything that's happening is according to his will." His will referred to the great sorcerer Arcane. That night, with the rain pouring down, Arcane's dark magic quietly filled the entire Alfus Academy grounds. Meanwhile, at the Royal Library, ancient books recorded that everything in the world has its own weight. It was because of this that the balance of symmetry in the universe was disrupted, and due to countless circumstances, the events that followed, thanks to these disruptions, had brought the world we know to life. From the middle of a mountain of books, Need, with dark circles under his eyes, shouted out, "So, in the end, the world we know wouldn't exist without weight, right?" Neeb, a fifth grader, with messy hair like a bird's nest, jumped up suddenly, raising his voice. "No, what's more important is why weight even existed in the first place. I doubt it just appeared out of nowhere like mud. Maybe." Facing Need, Iruki, also a fifth grader, was sprawled out on the desk. Slowly, he responded, "Well, it's just weight, or something like that." Need, not satisfied, shouted back. Are you serious? What you're saying is that God created everything, right? Are you losing blood? Ha! Do you need to eat something to wake up? Aruki completely ignored him. He boredly picked his nose. I'm just saying whatever. I don't really know. Aruki glanced up at the library ceiling, where golden light from the lamps shimmered softly. His voice carried a tone of tired resignation. We spent all the time we could in this library, looking up everything we could about weight, but in the end we still can't understand something that goes beyond human comprehension. Aruki sat up and shared his opinion. I think we've gotten as close as we can from an omniscient perspective. At this point, Aruki turned to Shirone, who was lying still in a pile of books. He softly called out, Shirone. Aruki asked Shirone, from your all-knowing perspective, what is weight? Shirone didn't respond right away, his thoughts unclear. According to the books, a mage's omniscient ability allows them to form an objective, unbiased perspective. However, the power of omniscience is deeply personal to each mage. Shirone, now a 5th grade student, pulled a book away from his face with a tired sigh after hearing Aruki's question. He frowned and said, It's a bit hard to put into words. But Shirone paused for a moment, his mind wandering as he remembered his experience connecting with the immoral energy. At that time, he reached out and mystical crystals fell into his hands. In that instant, Shirone had a profound sense of existence in his mind. Need and Aruki both asked at the same time, Existence? Shirone nodded. Yeah, I could feel a will to exist, a very strong desire. He described it as if it was desperately trying to make anyone, anywhere, aware of its existence. Hearing Shirone speak, Aruki rubbed his chin, thinking deeply, as if trying to grasp the idea of proving someone's existence. Suddenly, Need shouted, What about this? Shirone blinked in confusion. Ha! Need, excited, said, Shirone, your concept of omnipotence. Need eagerly suggested, What if we called it the molecule of the gods? At the mention of Need's idea, Shirone's eyes lit up. Aruki sat up straight, nodding in approval. That's a great name. You got me thinking. Shirone nodded, impressed. That name is perfect for what I had in mind. Nice one. With both of his friends praising him, Need beamed with excitement. Shirone said, Really? Awesome. This way, omnipotence will feel even stronger. It's much clearer in my mind now. Shirone held onto his magical energy and muttered the name Need had given it. Molecule of the gods. Shirone smiled. I'll study it more now. The next morning, the first rays of sunlight shone over Alfus' magic academy. On the school grounds, Need, Shirone, and Aruki walked together. Need had his hands behind his head, walking with a bored sigh. I can't believe our break ended like this. Aruki, shrugging, said, A suspension is still a break, huh? Shirone asked, raising an eyebrow. You guys haven't forgotten the promise we made yesterday, right? At the mention of their serious promise from yesterday, Need and Aruki's faces fell. They both looked nervous and uneasy as they muttered, to graduate together, we need to make sure we pass to Class 4 this time. Shirone, getting anxious, reminded them, It's only been one day. Aruki and Need's tears flowed freely, panic rising as they imagined some possible future and turned to Shirone for reassurance. Don't make me stay in Class 1 by myself, Aruki pleaded. Then Aruki added, Shirone, it's okay if you stay another year at school, right? Shirone, looking worried, replied, But your grades are both higher than mine. I'm the one in the most danger here. Need spoke up, Today's the last day. Do you guys want to stop by the research room? Shirone waved them off. I need to go somewhere first. You two go ahead. After telling Shirone to remember, Aruki and Need went ahead. Once separated from Aruki and Need, Shirone walked slowly, looking up at the clear blue sky. He reflected on everything. Just last month, I was still an ordinary first-year student. Now I've learned about ancient god molecules and made some valuable friends. A gentle breeze caressed Shirone's blonde hair, and he felt a bit nostalgic. He recalled walking alongside Amy. She's my girlfriend, he thought. She introduced him to everyone like that. Beautiful memories played in Shirone's mind like a slow-motion film. He remembered giving Amy a big basket of apples. He smiled and said to her, It's all thanks to you. I think I should properly thank you. She was taken aback. What? Apples. That night, he, along with Need and Aruki, had been playing pranks scaring the whole school. Amy secretly admired him, and that evening she had both cried and told him, From now on, don't call me senior anymore. Looking back now, Shirone quietly felt grateful to Amy who had helped him get to where he was. At that moment, in the advanced class, the students were getting ready to enter the classroom. Amy and Shirelle, as usual, were heading to class together. Suddenly, Shirone appeared right in front of both of them. Amy, senior Shirelle. Amy and Shirelle were immediately startled. Shirone smiled brightly and gently asked, Did I scare you? I'm sorry. I just wanted to surprise you. Shirone felt a little embarrassed. He glanced down at the 2 coffee cups and softly said, "Thank you, Amy. Thanks to you." In response, Amy acted cold and distant. "Even Shirelle looks down on you now. Do you even realize where you are?" she said, glaring at him with a fierce look, warning him, "I'll give you credit for your bravery in coming to the graduation class. But didn't you go too far? As a student, you should focus on your studies." Shirelle said to Amy, "Let's go. I thought we'd have some peace for a while." With that, Shirelle and Amy turned and walked away, leaving Shirone behind. He awkwardly called out to them, "Senior Shirelle, Amy." Shirone nervously ran after Amy and Shirelle. He called out to them, "Are you too angry with me because I haven't visited in a while?" Without warning, Shirelle shoved Shirone, causing 2 hot cups of coffee to fall to the ground. Shirelle shouted at Shirone, "I tried to let this go, but this is called stalking. Do you even realize that? Get lost while I'm still being nice. Leave now if you don't want to get disciplined." Each word Shirelle spoke felt like a sharp knife stabbing deep into Shirone's soul. He trembled, speechless. It can't be. Shirone couldn't understand why they were suddenly treating him like this. Amy, feeling a little sorry for Shirone, gently pulled Shirelle's arm and whispered to her, "That's enough, let's go. Lunch break is almost over." Shirone refused to believe it. He kept denying everything. Lie. Shirone tried to get up, turned, and ran, the words "lie" repeating over and over in his mind. Shirelle watched him leave, frowning as she muttered, "He's so strange. He looks innocent, but is actually so stubborn." She reassured Amy, "Don't worry too much. You got yourself a handsome guy." As she said that, even Shirelle felt like something was off. Amy, confused, asked Shirelle, "Who? Who is that?" Meanwhile, Chiron was deeply shaken. He ran forward without paying attention to his surroundings and accidentally bumped into Mark. Mark pushed him away, looking annoyed. "Ha! What are you doing?" Chiron immediately recognized him and called out, "Mark." When Mark saw that Chiron was wearing the badge of a senior student, he instinctively bowed and said, "Sorry, senior." Chiron was taken aback and asked, "Mark, you don't recognize me." He quickly added, "It's me, Chiron. We took the teleportation test together." Hearing this, Mark furrowed his brow. He replied, "Oh, right." Mark scratched his ear, avoiding eye contact, and hesitantly said, "I'm not really sure, but sorry I didn't recognize you." Chiron couldn't believe what he was hearing. He was stunned and asked again, "Mark, you really don't know who I am?" Just then, Sena walked over from a distance and asked, "Hey, what's going on?" Chiron recognized Sena's voice and turned to her with a look of desperation. Professor Sena exclaimed, "Oh my gosh, you're asking him who he is? Are you a new student? I've never seen you before." When Sena asked, Chiron froze. Sena continued, "What's your name?" Seeing that Chiron was unfamiliar to him, Mark clenched his fists, looking like he was ready to fight. He asked, "Who's this?" The students around them began to gather around Chiron, whispering to each other. "I've never seen him before. Seems suspicious. Is he a thief? Who is this guy?" Chiron suddenly screamed and turned to run. Mark immediately shouted after him, "Stop. Catch him. He's very suspicious." Chiron ran while crying. He kept denying, "This isn't real. This is fake." He kept running, desperately trying to convince himself, "It's fake. It's fake." Chiron reached the team's meeting room and burst through the door. Need and Iruki were sitting inside. He rushed in, panic in his voice, and asked, "Need, Iruki, you know me, right?" Through his tears, he said, "It's Chiron." Need's expression suddenly turned dark. He asked, "How? How did you get in here?" Both Need and Iruki exchanged cold looks before asking, "Who are you?" In that moment, Chiron was completely hopeless. A thought flashed through his mind. I thought for a moment, have I never been to this school? Is this all just a dream? Need, sitting behind the desk, stared at Chiron with cold eyes and questioned him sharply. "Wait a minute. How does an outsider know the key to Estas?" A barrage of questions from Mead felt like sharp arrows closing in on Chiron. "Did another research group send you? Who are you?" Chiron suddenly burst into tears. He truly didn't know what to do anymore. Even his only friends had forgotten who he was. He was starting to doubt his own existence, wondering if it was all just a lie. Iruki suddenly grinned in a strange way. Then both of them collapsed into loud, mocking laughter. Iruki laughed while making an ugly face. I couldn't hold it in anymore, and Nii was laughing so hard that tears were streaming down his face. He pointed at Chiron and said, "Look at his face." Nii turned to Iruki and asked, "Did you hear that?" Nii then mimicked Chiron's voice, saying, "You guys know me, right? It's me, Chiron." Iruki couldn't stop laughing and lost all sense of composure. "Stop it. My stomach hurts," he said, laughing. Suddenly, Chiron collapsed to his knees. He whispered, "Do you two remember me?" Seeing Chiron suddenly fall to the ground, Need and Iruki were both scared. Need quickly stood up and rushed over to check on him. "Chiron, why are you crying?" Need asked. Aruki also approached Shirone, looking worried. What's going on? Is something wrong? Need gently rubbed Shirone's back and spoke softly, sorry for teasing you. After listening to Shirone explain the whole story, I started to get a general idea. They don't remember you. You asked Shirone, what do you mean by that? Aruki, who was sitting next to Shirone, couldn't understand it either, but it was strange that even Professor Sina said the same thing. Shirone buried his face in his hands, quietly crying. When I looked into their eyes, they weren't lying. They really didn't remember me, so I sat up. You suggested, maybe we should go outside and check. Shirone quickly stopped me. What if you forget me too once we go out there? Thinking about the possibility that Need and Aruki might forget him as well, Shirone buried his face and started crying. If that happens, Aruki came up with an idea. What if we write it down? He didn't waste time. Aruki grabbed a pen and wrote on Need's hand. If you lose your memory, the person with the Big Dipper symbol is your friend. He clenched his fist, and on the back of Need's hand was a drawing of the Big Dipper. Need smiled confidently. If we do this, even if we forget, it won't matter, right? Shirone hesitated. Could this be some kind of supernatural activity? Need hesitated too. I don't know. I can't think of anything that could cause memory loss. Aruki spoke up. Let's go outside and check now. Before long, all three of them stood up. Shirone and Aruki had returned to the Alfus Magic Academy. They walked carefully step by step. From the outside, the academy looked as it always did, dignified and majestic. As soon as they reached the school gates, Need, Shirone, and Aruki were stunned and gasped. What? What the heck is going on here? In the schoolyard, all the students had gathered together. Their faces looked dark and confused as they spoke. This was even stranger than what Shirone had mentioned. Aruki, curious, asked, what are they doing? Need suggested we get closer to see. Shirone quickly stopped them, saying, what if we get too close and end up like them? Aruki didn't think that was likely. Your chances of that happening are pretty low. Didn't you come into contact with them earlier? Shirone thought about it and nodded. Yeah, you're right. It should be fine. Just then, Need suddenly called out, hey Gabe, what the hell are you doing? Gabe looked up, confused, and asked, do you know me? Need stepped closer to Gabe, surprised. Of course I know you. Now tell me, where are you going? Gabe widened his eyes, looking lost, and said, tell me what's going on. Suddenly, Gabe grabbed both of his shoulders and asked urgently, who am I? And what is this sound I've been hearing? Gabe held his head in his hands and screamed in agony. Aruki couldn't hear anything, but Need panicked and asked him, what are you hearing right now? Aruki watched Gabe carefully and then quickly pulled Shirone aside. Hey, if he doesn't realize that the sound he's hearing is his own voice. Gabe continued to scream wildly. Aruki guessed, I think he's even forgotten how to speak. Gabe screamed, tears and snot pouring from his face. Aruki concluded that he was continuously losing his memory. Suddenly, Gabe fell completely silent. Shirone, surprised, said, It stopped. He glanced around, noticing that the other students like Gabe had vacant looks in their eyes. They moved like puppets, walking in sync. The students followed each other out of the academy, as if under some sort of control. It wasn't just the students, even the teachers were caught in the same trance. It seemed like an invisible hand was pulling the strings, directing everyone to walk into the forest. Deep inside, Erin, dressed in a black cloak, was already waiting. She turned to Canis and said, I've gathered all of them, Canis. Erin gave Canis a signal. Let's go. Canis nodded grimly. Lucas let out a mocking laugh. That's pretty scary. He crossed his arms, standing among the students, taunting them. They've all turned into zombies, no thoughts, but still alive. So I can do whatever I want with them, right? Lucas stepped closer to Amy, teasing her. Whoa, I didn't expect to find such a beautiful girl in a place like this. Why don't we? Canis coldly interrupted him. Lucas. She glared at him with cold, sharp eyes and warned him in a chilling voice, if you ruin my master's grand plans with your filthy actions, I'll kill you. Lucas shrugged and looking bored said, You're so strict. Can't I have a little fun? Canis coldly repeated his warning, if you dare ignore my words again, I'll kill you right on the spot. Lucas' eyes burned with fury. He thought to himself, this arrogant kid. He quietly simmered with hatred toward Canis, feeling no liking for him at all. I want to kill him right now, he thought, but I'm not foolish enough to fight a mage in our own territory. I'll kill you the moment you let your guard down, Lucas muttered under his breath. His hand rested casually on Amy's shoulder as he clicked his tongue in frustration. Then Lucas turned away, showing a sign of concession to Canis. Fine, it's pointless anyway, if I'm not getting paid. Seeing that Lucas had stopped causing trouble, Canis turned and walked off. The students followed one by one, heading deeper into the forest under the guidance of Erin and Canis. Behind a tree nearby, Shirone whispered to Aruki, they're the ones behind this. Should we stop them? The rookie firmly shook his head. No. Confused, Shirone turned to ask, why not? The rookie took a moment to explain, his tone serious. Memory manipulation magic is incredibly difficult, and they've used it on over 500 people. At this, Aruki's face darkened. He emphasized, not to mention, those 500 people are all exceptionally smart students. Aruki continued, outlining the risks of continuing to challenge Canis and Aaron, two people who had dedicated their lives to sharpening their minds at the Academy of Magic, and the professors like Sena, a level 6 mage. Need hesitantly said, so that means... Shirone, in a panic, continued, so they're stronger mages than all of them. Aruki agreed with Shirone's reasoning. That's right, they're so powerful we can't even imagine it. Aruki thought it was time to track their trail. It'll be too late to interfere once things get even more dangerous. Shirone suddenly spoke up. No, I'm not here. Need looked confused and paused. Huh? Shirone exclaimed, the principal and Professor Aella aren't here. At the same time, deep in the forest in a small house, Aella was meditating. Sweat poured down her forehead as she furrowed her brow. Suddenly, a noise came from the roof, and crows scattered in all directions. Aella opened her eyes wide. She bent over, gasping for air, her mind racing. She wondered, what is that? Thousands of demons had appeared overnight. A pigeon flew by in front of Athella's porch. She pushed her glasses up, thinking to herself. Not only that, but it was already past class time, and no one had come to look for her. How can I be worried? Aella quickly left her house and rushed to the school. When she arrived, she was shocked. Why is there no one here? She looked around, her confusion growing. How is this possible? There's not a single person in the academy. Suddenly, Aella froze. From a distance, Thad ran frantically toward her. As he ran, he hurriedly said, Professor Aella, I'm glad you're okay. Recognizing that it was Thad approaching, Aella quickly asked, Professor Thad, what happened? Thad immediately delivered the news. There's been an attack. The academy has been attacked. Thad, still panicked, continued to inform Aella, Professor Aella, we're under attack. It's dark magic. We're being attacked by dark magic. At that moment, Aella immediately understood. That meant the sudden spike in criminal activity the night before. Thad kept running toward her, quickly summarizing the situation. It's going to affect the whole academy. Even the gatekeeper's memories have been erased. Thad spoke seriously to Aella. Professor Aella, the one behind all of this is Victor Arcane, the grand sorcerer who brought disaster to this world a long time ago. Upon hearing Thad, Aella was stunned. Are they grand sorcerers? Aella asked. Thad confirmed, yes. He continued, they're third-tier sorcerers. Once a sorcerer reaches third tier, they're given the title of Grand Sorcerer. A sorcerer's rank is determined by their achievements and reputation. As far as Thad knows, wiping out a monster lair can grant up to 500 achievement points, and receiving an invitation from the Emperor can add 100 reputation points. The requirement to advance from rank 10 to rank 9 is 1,000 points, and the points needed to move from rank 4 to rank 3, compared to Alfus, who is currently rank 4, are significant. Meanwhile, Arcane is ranked 3, and the point gap between the two is enormous, minus 280 million points. Victor Arcane is a legendary figure, a person who, with his powerful dark magic, single-handedly reached rank 3 in the previous century. Upon hearing about Victor Arcane's extraordinary achievements, Aella asked Thad, puzzled, why would someone like him pay attention to our academy? Aella is currently a rank 6 mage, and like Thad, he is also a rank 6 mage. Aella asked Thad, who was momentarily taken aback. He wondered if he should tell her the truth. Seeing Athella's confused expression, Thad really wasn't sure what to do. He recalled a few years back when he was reviewing Athella's background to decide whether to hire her as a professor at the academy. Alfus had been incredibly surprised. He exclaimed, a bishop from the Karsus order? A bishop is an important position responsible for guarding the 12 holy relics. Alfus looked up at Aella and, confused, asked her, the strongest bishop the order has in the kingdom and a rank 6 pastor. Why would someone like you want to become a university professor? Aella sat up straight across from Alfus and sincerely shared, because I want to follow the teachings of the Karsus bishop to be like salt and light. Aella stood up and shared her thoughts. In other academies, they only focus on training mages to become as powerful as possible. But here, Principal Alfus respects the students' autonomy and teaches them how to take responsibility for their own power. With a bright smile, Aella said frankly, I truly admire and support your ideals, Principal. That's why I wanted to come to this academy. Athella's spirit and enthusiasm made a strong impression on Thad. Now, as he reflected on it, Thad found himself deeply conflicted. Finally, he made up his mind and called out to her, Aella. He carefully chose his words. I hope you could remain calm after hearing what I'm about to say. Victor Arcane is Principal Alfus. Hearing Thad's words, Aella was momentarily stunned. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, then slowly opened her eyes and said with a composed tone, "I understand." Aella declared firmly, "No matter who it is, anyone who harms the students of this academy must be erased. We have to protect them." A blue glow radiated from Athella's body, and Thad quickly called out to her, "Aella!" Aella turned in one direction, describing the situation of the students who were heading toward the mountain range. Before her, the scene of the deep forest appeared, and she exclaimed, "The mountain range?" They seemed to be heading toward an impassable bridge. I noticed 3 people who seemed to be leading them all. Aella suddenly stopped. "Wait, there are 3 more people chasing after them," she said. Thad, clearly anxious, asked Aella, "Can you tell who they are?" Aella hesitated for a moment. "I'm not sure, but this uniform." She froze. Aella recognized one of the 3 as Shirone. On Shirone's side, the 3 of them, including Iruki, were hiding behind a tree, speaking quietly. "Why are they bringing them here?" Iruki asked. He was confused. An impassable bridge. Are they planning to push everyone off the cliff? Need, angry, spoke out. "What? How could they do that?" Iruki frowned and analyzed the situation. Usually there's nothing to gain for either side by pushing them off a cliff. Suddenly, Iruki's voice turned serious. "But there's one reason they might do it. If they're hostages, I'll go call for backup right now," Need said, but quickly stopped Iruki. "Hold on, look at those people over there. They're acting strange." Chiron seemed calmer. He said, "Even though the principal isn't here, we still have Mr. Thad and Ms. Aella. I'm sure someone knows what's going on and has already called for help." However, Chiron stressed, "But if they plan to harm the hostages before help arrives, we'll have no choice but to fight." Upon hearing Chiron, both Need and Iruki exchanged a look, silently agreeing with what he had just said. Iruki pondered, "It would be a huge risk if we fought them, but the difference in numbers is so clear." Need, feeling helpless, spoke up. "There's no other choice. We just have to wait." Chiron observed, "It looks like they don't plan on pushing them off the cliff just yet. They seem to be waiting for someone." Below, Lucas suddenly shouted, "Hey, Brad." He pointed at the students and yelled, "Why hasn't your old man shown up yet? Don't you know how important timing is in situations like this? You want everyone to get killed waiting around here, or what?" Canis shot a glare at Lucas and replied slowly, "We can't start until we get that guy Alfus out here. The only thing you need to worry about is your contract. That's it." At that moment, Aaron used a communication spell to reach Canis. "Canis, it's been too long since the leader contacted us. Why haven't they come back?" Canis glanced at Aaron and silently sent a message back. "I don't know. It's been past the meeting time for a while now, and I'm starting to feel uneasy. I don't doubt the leader, but I just don't get it. The leader has been looking forward to this moment more than anyone. Why haven't they shown up?" Just then, Lucas's shout interrupted Canis's thoughts. "Tan, at least make sure these guys are having a good time. Everything's still okay, right?" Canis gritted his teeth, trying to hold back his anger. "Huh? Why didn't the leader pick that guy for this mission? He couldn't keep it in anymore." Turning around, Canis snapped at Lucas, "You trash." Lucas immediately erupted with fury. He shouted, "What? You really want to fight, don't you? You asking for it?" Fuming, Lucas yelled even louder, "You think I'm joking with you?" His strength was not something to be underestimated. Even Elrin was taken aback. She thought to herself, that death eye of his is ridiculously powerful, enough to even paralyze the human central nervous system. As far as Canis knew, it was a skill that only those who had committed countless crimes could possess. With that thought, Canis grew even more contemptuous. "Back in my hometown, where I grew up, I've met countless pieces of trash, people who treat others like cheap food." Canis narrowed his eyes and insulted Lucas. "You're just like them, a piece of trash, the kind you see all over the streets." Hearing Canis insult him so harshly, Lucas let out a sinister laugh. "Now I get it. No wonder I never liked you from the start." With his hands on his hips, Lucas tilted his head and asked Canis, "You think we're different?" "Huff, I'm trash, and you're some noble soul with a higher purpose." Canis sneered. "These zombies, they may not have reason, but their bodies still function." Lucas glanced at a student lying on the ground, drool dripping from his mouth. He spoke calmly, "And when they can't eat, drink, or rest, they'll slowly die off, even if we don't throw them down this cliff." Suddenly, Lucas grabbed Sena by the throat. With cruel indifference, he said, "This is what I can feel." He lifted Sena off the ground, watching her struggle, then sneered. "Doesn't that mean you want to kill everyone here?" Canis quickly countered, "We didn't bring them here to kill them. They're hostages." Lucas's grin turned even more wicked, "And that's exactly why I want to reduce their numbers." Sena's legs kicked wildly in the air, without any mercy. Lucas continued, "Because when this is all over, the guy in charge will declare that everyone involved in this is a murderer." Aaron flinched at the sight of Lucas choking Sena, but didn't intervene. Canis's gaze grew icy, and he growled, Are you planning to break the rules you set for yourself? Lucas raised an eyebrow. Killing a girl is shameful, but... Suddenly, something strange happened beneath Lucas's feet, followed by a deafening explosion. The shockwave from the blast forced Aaron to raise his arms in front of himself to shield his body. Canis remained calm, his hand reaching out, using Aruki's magic. He clicked his tongue. Aruki scornfully shouted at Lucas, "I thought at least one or both of your legs would be blown off." Lucas kneeled down on one leg and loudly asked Need and Aruki, "What kind of monsters are you two?" Suddenly, a beam of light shot up into the sky from behind him. Shirone, furious, angrily declared, "I won't let you get away with this." Canis interrupted, "Who do you think you are stepping in here, and how did you break free from mind control?" Meanwhile, deep in the thick forest near the entrance to a cave, a figure emerged. It was Arcane. He seemed slightly surprised. Standing in front of him was Aella. Arcane asked coldly, "Did you come here alone?" Thad told Aella, "We should leave the hostage to the kids. They're smart. They'll buy us some time." After a few seconds of hesitation, Aella finally agreed with Thad's suggestion. She asked him, "All right, but what about us?" Without hesitation, Thad replied, "We need to find the principal." He spoke seriously. We needed to handle this situation. At Thad's words, a brief flash of tension crossed Athella's face. "So the task I need to do has already been decided." Thad frowned and pleaded with her, "Please do this." What Aella needed to do was confront him directly. Thanks to her magic, she quickly discovered his hiding place, a cave deep within the old forest. Thad's words echoed in her ears, "Find him." When Aella arrived, Arcane slowly stepped out. His voice was deep as he asked, "Who are you?" Aella respectfully bowed her head and introduced herself. "I am Aella, Bishop of Karsus. It's an honor to meet someone who's considered a legend." Arcane was slightly surprised when he heard Athella's introduction. A bishop? He silently assessed her, considering that she had managed to break through the black hole and stand here. She must be a true seeker, but a bishop. For a moment, he couldn't believe his eyes. In all his life, the bishops he had encountered were all old men. But now he realized Aella was a genius. Had she already surpassed the Eightfold Path and reached the height of sainthood at such a young age? He suddenly chuckled. Just as expected. This world is truly interesting. His eyes then burned with a sharp, deadly energy. He growled, "Where is he?" "Alfus, where is he?" Aella got straight to the point. "If you're trying to stall, it's not going to work." Arcane, surprised, asked, "What do you mean?" Aella analyzed sharply. "You used a powerful spell last night. You probably don't have much strength left. The only thing you can do now is wait for the night." Arcane stared silently at Aella. She boldly made her offer. "If you lift the spell you've placed on the students right now, I'll let you face the headmaster in person." The corners of Arcane's mouth curled into a smile. He laughed wildly as if he just heard the funniest story in the world. He mocked Aella. "You think I'm just stalling?" With those words, Aella quickly looked up, alarmed. Suddenly, the trees around her rose up from the ground surrounding her. Arcane's mocking voice echoed in her ears. "How foolish. It's a shame to kill you." He coldly cursed her, "But die anyway." In an instant, the strange trees engulfed Aella. Over by Chiron, Lucas taunted Canis. "Pretty perfect plan, huh?" He blamed Canis and Aaron, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "You guys ignored what I said, and now we have 3 witnesses showing up." Glancing at Chiron and Aruki holding up Sena, Lucas shouted, "What a ridiculous plan." The man took the opportunity to demand, "If you give me more payment, I'll fight this battle for you. What do you think?" Canis clicked his tongue in disgust. Aaron used a mental manipulation technique to contact Canis. He told Aaron, "I'll handle him." Aaron quickly insisted, "Let me do it." Canis spoke coldly, "You handle the hostages." His gaze grew sharp. "I can handle this on my own." Lucas sat down on a rock, waiting for the show to unfold. Yeah, just go ahead." In his mind, he silently cursed Canis and Aaron. Idiots. He felt that fighting more would eventually lead to consequences. Canis stepped in front of the Shirone group and casually asked, "How did you manage to avoid the mind control spell and make it here?" Need burst out laughing. "Ha ha, avoid? We broke that dark magic with our own strength." Canis, of course, didn't believe it. Ridiculous. If that were true, you wouldn't be standing here in this condition. Canis used his magic as he spoke. With little time left, he suggested, "Let's charge together." Need tried to act tough. "That spell won't work on us." Aruki whispered to Shirone, "His killing intent is intense." Shirone quietly replied, "You should protect Sena." Shirone slowly gathered his magical energy. "If that's dark magic, my magic has the advantage due to its natural counter." Shirone ordered, "I'll fight him. You guys take on the swordsman." Shirone asked with concern, "By yourself? Would it be safer if we attack together?" "It seems like the swordsman won't interfere." Lucas said it, showing he couldn't care less. Chiron carefully reminded him, no matter what he says, don't let your guard down. He's already pushed innocent people into a pit. He emphasized, he's really strong. Chiron could sense the killing intent radiating from Lucas. The man was also watching him. That kid, he's a bit of a hassle, catching on to things too quickly. Aruki quietly reflected on Chiron's words. Chiron's right. That guy's easy to fool, normally. Watching Chiron's back, Aruki felt more confident, but in real combat, he's like a completely different person. Chiron took slow, steady steps toward Canis, who was also closing the distance. The magical forces from two completely opposite extremes clashed against each other. Chiron suddenly froze. What's that? In front of him, Canis' eyes were so empty, so lifeless, it sent chills down his spine. Chiron felt like he couldn't figure him out. Everywhere Canis walked, darkness spread with him. He unleashed powerful dark magic towards Chiron. Chiron immediately raised his hand, releasing his light magic. The light and darkness clashed. Chiron gasped, is the light being blocked? His light magic was completely halted by Canis' dark magic. Chiron was pushed back, but he didn't give up. He summoned his light magic again. Chiron's energy surged toward Canis. However, just like before, the darkness devoured all the light. Chiron shouted in panic, what just happened? Even when the light hits, the darkness still remains. Canis' expression remained calm. Chiron gritted his teeth. So there's a power gap between us. A gap so big it can break the laws of nature? Canis coldly responded, you plan to rely on the concept of counteracting? With your skills, really? Chiron sweated so. Canis raised an eyebrow. What is it? Chiron thought to himself, what if I try this? He focused his energy, and an overwhelming force from Chiron was unleashed. Canis reached out, feeling a sense of confusion as he thought, something's not right. He silently thought to himself, let's see if I can get stronger. But suddenly he was thrown back. Canis screamed in terror. Even at that moment, he still didn't understand what had just happened when that overwhelming force sent him flying. Aaron shouted in panic, Canis. Aaron was in shock as the light had just pierced through the barrier and sent him flying. Need and Aruki stood there, mouths agape, and Lucas was frozen in fear. He couldn't help but wonder, what in the world is that kid? The scene shifts to a massive ancient tree. The sky slowly darkens and the wind starts howling. A flock of birds was desperately trying to fly as if they were trying to escape from something. The ancient trees, now alive with a sinister energy, surrounded a girl. She stood frozen in fear, her eyes wide as the branches swirled around her. Crash! It seemed the tree had completely swallowed her. Inside, she tried to scan her surroundings, searching for a way out. Suddenly, a foolish voice echoed through the darkness. It's pointless. An old figure appeared before her. He pointed at her with disdain and coldly said, die. Then he extended his hand toward her, launching branches at lightning speed. As she observed her surroundings, she thought, it's pitch black. Her fear grew as the thought crossed her mind, but using synesthesia, the tree branches continued to move closer to her as if they were about to stab straight into her. Suddenly, her body began to glow, and a powerful surge of light was released from within her. At that very moment, she felt no fear at all. After unleashing that burst of power, she immediately shot forward toward the trees. The branches kept charging at her, aiming directly for her, but with incredible speed. She skillfully dodged every single attack. As she moved, the threatening voice from earlier echoed again. Impressive. The voice continued, but the darkness. Before he could finish his sentence, he conjured a mass of dark hands that flew toward her. His voice seemed to be coming from everywhere. This time, it seemed his attack had taken effect. Two of her legs were restrained by the dark hands. However, she remained calm and started searching for a way to handle the situation. She spun around, but after completing the turn, she lost her composure. Panic rushed through her as she thought, a punch. If I had teleported right then, my legs would be useless by now. With that thought, she closed her eyes, almost as if trying to release something. The dark hands kept charging toward her. She continued thinking, in that case, I'll just teleport my upper body. As soon as she thought that, a reflection of herself shot out from her body. She quickly spun and kicked at the swarm of fists rushing toward her. She landed on the ground in a perfect stance. Maybe it was because the power inside her was so immense, but the spot where she landed had a large crater. Dirt flew everywhere, and that old voice echoed once again. As expected, Bishop Carsis. If she weren't a professor at this small school, she might have become a powerful figure by now. Maybe she was just tired. At this moment, beads of sweat dotted her face. The voice continued. Still, Alfus remained silent. He kept her extraordinary abilities and talent hidden. To her surprise, an old man with completely white hair appeared, but he no longer had the kind and warm appearance from before. Now he exuded a massive aura of murderous intent. He spoke again, to steal all the credit for himself. She screamed, "What do you want from me?" Suddenly, a shadowy blast shot toward her from below, Caught off guard and unable to react in time, she was struck and thrown back. It was him. He was summoning thousands of punches to rain down on her. In her eyes, the scene was terrifying, punches speeding toward her from every direction. At the same time in the castle, a voice unexpectedly rang out, "Master." In the principal's office, a young man with golden hair was frantically searching and shouting, "Master." He thought to himself, he must be nearby. He suddenly remembered something. He had heard that his master had built a secret room in the principal's office, but where could it be? He was thinking while searching around when, out of nowhere, a book appeared before him. It was completely black, with the title, Embracing the Darkness. He opened it, and that's how he found the hidden chamber. He stepped into a room and casually placed the lamp on the table. "Master," in the stillness, his voice echoed as he searched around. Looking up at the bookshelf next to him, he was startled, as if he had seen something special. There in front of him was a painting of a girl with black hair, a beautiful purple flower tucked into it. He stared at the painting, lost in thought. This person might be. Suddenly, a voice broke the silence. "Who's there?" He turned. "Master, you're all right." An old man with white hair and a long beard stepped forward. His face was grim as he asked, "Master, do I know you?" The young man with blonde hair was shocked and frightened. What's going on? Has he lost his memory? He thought to himself, but something felt off. Unlike others, his master didn't seem to have completely lost his memory. The old man rubbed his chin thoughtfully, then asked, "Lost my memory? Or have I traveled to the future?" The old man panicked, pulling at his hair in frustration. "Oh my God, I can't believe I've turned into an old man. Where did my handsome 18-year-old face go?" The young man stood there completely confused. 18 years old? He gasped, his face pale. "Does that mean all 40 years of my master's memories are gone? So the person in front of me is..." The old man, now calmer, asked, "Hey kid." Alfus, the young and famously arrogant man, scoffed, "What's going on here?" Thad answered honestly, "Master was injured by dark magic, which caused him to lose his memory. But that wasn't all. The safety of the students and faculty." Before Thad could finish, the old man interrupted. "No, I didn't ask about that." Thad, confused, replied, "Huh?" With a terrifying look on his face, the old man leaned his hand on his chin and asked, "What's happened to my job?" Thad stammered. "Master is the headmaster of one of the 5 most prestigious academies in the kingdom, the Alfus Academy of Magic. He's someone who not only respects the students, but also the faculty members." As soon as the old man heard Thad's response, he burst out laughing uncontrollably, laughing as he asked, "I became a teacher, huh? Respect too." Surprised by this, he quickly asked again, "Me?" Thad, helpless, corrected him. "Yes, it's true." So, before Thad could finish his sentence, the man suddenly grabbed him by the collar and lifted him up. He pressed his face close to Thad's and coldly asked, "What rank am I?" Seeing the terrifying face right in front of him, Thad was so scared that he stammered out an answer. "4. You're rank 4. The man's face turned bright red in anger, veins popping out all over, his eyes wide with fury. He shouted, "What? Only rank 4? Rank 4, when I'm the most talented genius on the continent." As he yelled, he turned and slammed his fist into the bookshelf on the wall. Books flew everywhere. He shouted again, and I didn't even make it to number 1. Behind him, Thad stood frozen, horrified by the scene unfolding in front of him. The man kept shouting insults. "Not even 60 years old, and you're stuck as a small-time principal. Pathetic." He even pointed out that he still kept a photo of the difficult woman right in his office. With that, he ripped the photo off the wall and threw it down onto the ground. Thad stood paralyzed with fear, his face pale. The man, still in a rage, turned to him and asked, "Hey kid, if you were my student, you should know how to use quantum memory retrieval, right? Give me my memories back now. I need to know what this idea has been doing for the past 40 years. He was struck silent. "Master, would you consider not revisiting your memories?" he asked, his voice trembling as if on the verge of tears, and the room around them was a chaotic mess. Standing before Thad, the old man spoke again, threatening, "If you're truly my disciple, I'll abandon you. I don't need a weakling like you. Do you think I, the great Alfus, would be afraid of my own past?" As he spoke, his anger flared up once more. The young man trembled in fear and answered, "Yes." He wondered to himself, when someone has to relive a memory twice, does their personality change? He was scared that the master he once knew might never return. Right now, he could only trust in his master. The young man placed his hand on the old man's head, his face filled with concern. "I'll use quantum purification to remove the dark energy blocking your memories. After that, it will be up to you, master." The old man sat in the chair, closed his eyes, and calmly responded, "You, of all people, are worried about me. Just focus on your task." The young man's thoughts continued to race. Not to mention, those 40 years were the most terrifying of the old man's life. A voice echoed in his mind. Master Alpheus, Master Alpheus, Master Alpheus. Before his eyes, beautiful women smiled brightly at him. One of them asked, "How are you so smart?" Another woman chimed in, "Master Alpheus, tell us more." The person holding the cup raised it to their lips and replied, "My ladies, don't worry. Tonight will last forever." A young man with beautiful golden hair spoke up in response. In his view, a ruined city appeared, a place where you could easily lose your life over a small mistake. The battlefield. Two children were hugging each other, comforting each other for a lifetime. Below, flames were consuming the magnificent high-rise buildings. On rooftop, people in robes stood, gazing down at the chaotic scene below. We have to live on the battlefield. To survive, we are forced to become swords. In stark contrast to the previous scene, this was an image of a grand, majestic city. Compared to the children who get to go to school and secure good jobs, we cannot be compared to them. That's what the master said. A little girl with violet eyes stood frozen, her gaze distant as she spoke to us. A young man with golden hair and bright blue eyes stood tall, his posture straight as if he had just performed a spell. Underneath a large, ancient tree, another young man sat trembling, crouched down there. "It seems like you just encountered something very scary." I unleashed the dark art almost instinctively. The young man under the tree thought to himself, "If I had been just 1 second late, what would have happened?" A strange voice suddenly echoed, "You're in quite a difficult situation, Canis." But it seemed that the young man, Canis, wasn't really surprised when the voice spoke up. He calmly asked, "What did I just bump into?" The strange voice responded, "Weight. The person who was absorbed by a light source carried weight. Maybe that young blonde guy earlier shot some energy at you." Canis, holding his chest, struggled to ask, "What the hell is that? How can light have weight?" The voice replied, "There's an intermediary that can turn light energy into something with mass. It's completely possible." Canis, frowning seriously, said, "Are you kidding me? I've never heard of anything like that." The voice thought for a while and suddenly said, "Haha, looks like you figured it out." Canis' face turned as dark as a pot. "Sorry if you were hurt. I'm just telling the truth. That guy is pretty strong and special. He has a unique way of casting magic for a student at the academy." The voice kept rambling on as Canis put on his hat and kept walking. However, this time, before the voice could finish speaking, he interrupted and asked, "I'm supposed to be the winner, right?" The voice laughed, clearly pleased. "Of course, as long as we work together." Canis started walking. The power of darkness always surrounded him. A girl screamed in surprise. Canis, with a dark expression, shouted, "Oh shit, that bastard." Canis stepped forward with a provocative look on his face. "You survived that magic attack. Well, you must be feeling pretty confident, huh?" He calmly continued walking toward the arena. "Is this all you've got? I think this battle is going to be quite interesting." Shirone's face was grim. Canis spoke again. "Let me enjoy this a little more." Shirone, confused, asked, "Enjoy? You're holding a hostage, and you call this a battle?" As he spoke, he conjured a ball of light. On the other side, Canis was also summoning dark energy to surround his body. Canis taunted, "Your spells don't work on me anymore." No sooner had he said that than Shirone flew toward him and said, "Then try this." Canis slammed his palms straight down onto the ground, creating a huge hole with cracks spreading out. The dark energy surrounding Canis was a stark contrast to Shirone's warm light. The two magical forces clashed directly, creating a loud sound. Shirone, slightly startled, muttered, "The same method of casting, huh?" He shot up into the air and then summoned 3 powerful beams of light that aimed directly at Canis. Below, the onlookers were shocked and terrified by the scene of the two fighting. They looked like 2 wild beasts battling each other. Magic spells could be divided into 2 types, those you can dodge and those you can't. An older man, his face tense, was trembling as he thought, "With that flashing light, just as I thought, I need to take this person out first." Chiron, high above, looked down at the results of his work, countless craters on the ground. Suddenly, he sensed something from behind. It was Canis. When had he gotten there? Without warning, Canis unleashed dark bolts toward Chiron. This time, he was hit and knocked back. In shock, he gasped, "What?" He appeared behind me out of nowhere. After taking the hit, it took Chiron a moment to regain his composure. Using the incredible speed of his light magic, he dodged and countered Canis' attacks. Both of them kept darting from one spot to another. Down below, a young boy with green hair suddenly shouted, "It's the darkness." That person, he's using darkness to teleport. In an endless, silent dimension, Canis walked calmly. Meanwhile, the audience continued to murmur, undisturbed by the ongoing fight. One person asked, "Isn't that cheating? He can move anywhere he wants." Another person responded, "It still has its limits. He can only move to places connected to his own shadow entity." The young boy with blue hair still wondered, "But we still can't guess where he'll appear from, unless we analyze the shadows of the entire area in the blink of an eye." "Did you forget?" Aruki responded, giving Need a sharp look. Shirone, you're the one who can calculate the path for those powerful magical attacks, she added. Up above, the two were also engaged in a fierce battle. After some fighting, Shirone thought to himself, finally got him. With that, he shot a powerful beam of light towards the forest. At that moment, Canis emerged from the shadows. Below, everyone shouted in unison he did it. Just when they all thought it was over, a high-pitched laugh suddenly echoed. A wave of dark energy surged forward, protecting Canis from behind. Everyone's faces turned grim, not just the spectators, but even Shirone was taken aback. What? What's going on? Canis grinned, but there was no trace of amusement in his eyes. His darkness had swallowed up Shirone's light. A pair of legs ran desperately. It was Shirone, his face filled with fear, clothes torn, running for his life. Suddenly, a voice rang out, "Hey, kid." A monster with sharp fangs and a long, lolling tongue appeared, licking its lips. That shiny thing looks pretty tasty. Canis smiled seductively and introduced the creature that had just emerged from the shadows. This is the ultimate dark magic. A terrifying monster, after swallowing Shirone's energy blast, stood proudly, grinning arrogantly alongside Canis. Look at them. They really do look angry, someone remarked. On this side, Aruki, standing behind Shirone, looked visibly shaken as they watched Canis' monster. Can it talk? I've seen this kind of monster in books before, but I've never heard of it being intelligent. Shirone was in a rough state. Standing there sweating, he suddenly exclaimed, "A monster. Canis is capable of summoning one to help. Alchemists or mages, they can create many things, from items to potions, but none can solve this riddle, creating life." That's the field of biological magic. People often say that the difficulty of this field goes beyond human imagination. Shirone was even more shocked when he realized that the monster could not only talk, but was also incredibly intelligent. The creature on the opposite side grinned widely and didn't hold back in responding to Shirone's observation. Am I just smart? My butt looks great too, you know, but I'm not letting you see it. Aruki and Need stood there speechless, stunned by the size of the monster. That jerk really had some nerve. Canis finally spoke, a cruel grin spreading across his face. Of course it's smart. This is a monster with the intelligence of a high-level sorcerer. Now do you understand? The moment Canis finished speaking, Shirone sensed something coming. He quickly looked up in alarm. I admit you have some very unique magic, Shirone said, barely managing to speak in time. Suddenly, a column of dark magic shot down directly where Shirone was standing. Thankfully, he reacted fast enough, leaping out of the way just in time. But you're still just a student. Out of nowhere, another attack from Canis came from behind. Shirone dodged as best as he could, narrowly avoiding the continuous barrage of Canis strikes. However, he was knocked back hard, crashing to the ground. Lying there, Shirone struggled to get up. He tried to gather his magical energy to fight back, but as soon as he unleashed his spell, it was immediately blocked by Canis' dark magic. Frustrated, Canis began gathering more dark magic, growling under his breath. I told you you're magic. Once he charged enough, he slammed his hand onto the ground. A wave of dark energy shot forward, easily knocking Shirone's light magic out of the way. Won't work on me. Canis' dark magic was just too powerful. It surged towards Shirone, and things were looking increasingly dangerous. Seeing this, Aruki and Need realized the situation was rapidly worsening, so Shirone made a desperate move, charging forward to help him. With a shout, he rushed in alongside Aruki and Chiron to fight back. The dark magic strike was closing in on Shirone, almost ready to swallow him whole. He felt a wave of fear wash over him, and in a panic, he thought, what do I do now? I'm so scared of dying. At that moment, Shirone seemed like a frightened little boy, staring death in the face as he faced the overwhelming pressure of Canis' dark magic. The claws of the magic grazed his shoulder, causing blood to spill. Then, a thought flashed through his mind. If I lose, everyone will die. Images rushed through his head. His two friends, Amy and Sherelle, looking at him with deep concern, Sienna lying unconscious on the ground, Vincent, his eyes burning with rage, gritting his teeth in anger, and his two friends, Aruki and Nen, panicking as they rushed to his side. He thought, what can I do now? The magic strike hit Shirone, blood splattering everywhere. He thought, I have to use everything I've got to follow his moves. But his quantum light energy wasn't working. What do I do about that damn thing? Then, out of nowhere, something clicked in Shirone's mind as if a spark of hope had ignited in the direst of situations. His quantum energy flared up. His face twisted in pain, his teeth clenched as he screamed. Veins popped on his face as the burst of rainbow-colored power helped him break free from the suffocating darkness. Canis, standing on the ground, was stunned, unable to believe what he was seeing. He shouted in disbelief, what? He can bend light? Shirone broke free and landed hard, surrounded by an aura of limitless magical energy. His two friends, Aruki, and the person behind him, were running toward him and shouting, Shirone, Chiron immediately raised his hand to stop them from getting any closer. Shirone focused the light energy in his palm and spoke. Monsters can't move without a source of magic. Over by Canis, a monster sensed a slight disturbance after seeing Shirone escape from the dark magic and said, "Was it hard to keep going against that guy? Did it drain your will?" "Yes, but we're one. Together we can defeat him," Shirone replied. "Is that what you and that monster think?" Shirone continued. "I just use a light beam that hurt you, which means even the shadow beast has its limits." When Canis heard this, he laughed loudly, a mocking smile on his face. "Are you saying my willpower has limits?" he sneered. At that moment, Shirone had gathered enough light energy in his palm. "I'll find out," he said. Seeing the light from Shirone's energy build up, Canis widened his eyes in surprise, thinking to himself, has the light source grown bigger? Once Shirone had gathered enough power, she gritted her teeth in anger, preparing to unleash an energy attack toward the dark shadow of Canis and the phantom beast. "Between you and me, I wonder which one of us will fall first," she said. Shirone poured all of her strength into a powerful strike aimed at the phantom beast of Canis. The beast blocked Shirone's energy attack, feeling that the situation wasn't in its favor, and decided to speak up. "Canis, we should head back to the forest, where there's more darkness," the beast advised. Canis was confused by the beast's sudden suggestion and asked, "Why are you saying that? We can handle her." The phantom beast laughed at Canis' naive thinking. "I thought you were supposed to be smart, but turns out you're just an idiot. She's trying to exhaust your willpower. Are you really going to fall for that? She thinks she can outlast us with a little trick." Canis scoffed at Shirone's plan. It was a foolish tactic, but there was no need to play into her hands. "Let's lure her into the forest," he said. The phantom beast stood as a shield, blocking Shirone's attack. Through their mental link, it and Canis communicated a strategy to deceive Shirone, planning to kill her once they had her where they wanted her. She was rushing, so she'd likely follow them. "You're right. I agree. If we have the monster and the wisdom of my master on our side, we'll definitely be the ones to win." After setting the trap to kill Shirone with the phantom beast, Canis quickly darted into the shadows and ran off into the forest, leaving Shirone standing there. Immediately, Shirone activated his speed and raced into the forest, chasing after Canis' shadow, ready to face him head-on. "Shirone is dangerous in there," Ruki, standing at a distance, shouted in panic, realizing that the forest might be a trap set by the enemy. "Shirone, there's danger in the forest." But Shirone didn't listen. He kept chasing after him, gathering energy in his palms. He launched countless beams of quantum light energy forward. His strike lit up the entire forest. But Ruki in need could do nothing but stand helplessly outside, watching in awe. "We can't do anything. Just let him handle it, Shirone." Before he could finish his sentence, Ruki suddenly felt something approaching and quickly turned around. "Looks like it's just me and you two now. Let's do what we have to do." A massive figure, wielding two swords, was heading toward Ruki and Need. As he walked, he spoke. "All right, it's my turn to get started." He kept walking, pointing his swords at the two of them, a malicious grin on his face and a hungry look in his eyes. A thick, menacing aura surrounded him.